Can you hear me? Is this good? All right, 7:02. We're going to call this meeting for the Oak Park Village Board. I'm Chibi K, and I'll be sitting in today pro tem village president for President Scaman, who is ill today. We hope she gets better, and we'll see her soon. All right. Take the roll.
Trustee Eater.
Here.
Trustee Leving-Jacobson.
Here.
Trustee Straw.
Here.
Trustee Taglia.
Here.
Trustee Wesley.
Here.
President Scaman is absent. And President Pro Tem Enya.
Here. All right, that is roll. Do we have any non-agenda public comment?
No, we do not.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from Friday? A motion to approve the minutes from the February 10th and February 17th regular meetings of the Village Board.
So moved.
Second.
All right. You can take a roll. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, perfect. Next is Village Manager Report.
Okay. Thank you, President Pro Tem, and yeah, I think we're okay, right?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Oh yeah, motion.
Oh, sorry, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Oh, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Village Manager Jackson, do we have a Village Manager report?
Yes, President Pro Tem Enya and trustee members, we have two items tonight to briefly report on. I want to start tonight with just a brief update on the significant fire that we had in town last week at 1239 Taylor. So we're going to ask Chief J.T. Taylor, Terry, I'm sorry, Chief Terry to come up and provide an overview on where we stand with the fire, the outcome of the fire. Chief.
Thank you, Manager Jackson. Good evening, everyone. J.T. Terry, Fire Chief. As stated earlier, I'm sure most are aware, we had a significant fire last Tuesday evening. Quick recap, and happy to take any questions. On Tuesday, 17 February, at approximately 9 o'clock at 8:56 p.m., a call came into our dispatch center for the fire on a roof at 6119 North Avenue. Crews were dispatched. First unit was en route in under 1 minute. Crews arriving on scene within 4 minutes and 32 seconds of the dispatch. Once on scene, crews corrected the address to 1239 North Taylor. It was then broadcast to responding units, which were given direction and corrected approach routes while en route. Once on scene, crews immediately began to assess the situation and the overall condition of the building. Fire conditions were noted above the center of the building, with smoke emitting from the roof line around the entire building. Interior crews noted holes in the floor and heavy fire conditions throughout the first floor. Over the course of the evening, the building sustained heavy fire damage, including a partial roof collapse to the rear wall. Over the next 10.5 hours, more than 16 local fire departments responded to our call for assistance, including the City of Chicago and as far south as Evergreen Park and as far west as Oak Brook. Approximately 80 fire personnel were called to assist on the fireground operations. We were supported by many local law enforcement and county law enforcement agencies who were used for security and traffic control. We also had to call in several of our Village of Oak Park Public Works employees to help drain the street and to unclog the gutters. Over the course of the evening, over 5 fire trucks were needed, including specialty snorkel, which was moved to the rear of the vehicle. Oak Park and Burwood engines were used to pump and relay water, and Pleasant View Rehab Canteen and rehab vehicles were brought in to assist. Again, this fire took place in the evening and took to the early morning to control, and then also to the next day we had to return for 2 days of investigations, which were led by the Village of Oak Park Fire Department, supported by the State Fire Marshal and other agencies. So, again, a very high-level overview. More than happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions to start off with?
Might be way too early to tell, but any idea of the cause?
It is currently under investigation. We have completed the investigation on scene. It does take some time to accumulate all the photos, and like I said, there are multiple agencies on scene, so as we collect that information, we'll definitely release a report.
Okay, thank you. And the second follow-up question, I think maybe you remember hearing that typically the city of Chicago doesn't participate in mutual aid for fire. So, and I heard you list them as one of the responding departments. So yeah, was it just that big of a fire? Can you share more about that?
Sure, it was that large of a fire. This is the second time in my career I can remember Chicago coming. We participate in the mutual aid box alarm system, which most municipalities in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and then kind of the northwest part of Indiana do. As these alarms elevate, or as if we need specialty equipment, the city of Chicago will respond. But you are correct. Normally they do not. We do not call them either, for that matter. But with something like this, they did respond.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the update. Thank you mostly for the response and your leadership. Very grateful. My question is about the folks who were displaced. I mean, I know there was nobody in the building during the fire, and there had been at least a week plus of it being vacant. But do anybody in the village have a sense of remaining need from the families or residents that were displaced?
Someone will go up.
Evening, Jonathan Birch, Neighborhood Services Director. The village has undertaken sort of two different rounds of assistance to folks who are living in the building because of the deteriorating conditions there. So over the course of last summer, the village actually helped relocate 3 families that were tenants in the building out of the building, and then an additional long-term tenant that was living in the building into early January. At that point, we were not aware that there was any additional people living in the building who had long-term leases. Everyone else in the building, to our understanding, and when we followed up with them, was a squatter who had moved into the building because of the way that it had been unsecured. And so after receiving a court order and support from the courts in order to be able to clear the building for safety reasons, we did so in early February. Some of the individuals at that time were then offered opportunities to move into the emergency shelter here in town or connected via ECHO staff with the Chicago area shelter system as well. All those names then went on the ECHO follow-up list as well as those for Housing Forward to try and provide additional support and follow-up to them, given that they were displaced at that time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I just want to say, I know that there's a long history of issues at this property related to failed inspections, fines, progressive action regarding both a lack of upkeep that impacted residents, but also some health and safety violations. So I'm in support of us taking whatever legal actions are appropriate against the property owner, because this, while it's still unclear what precisely the cause was, the investigation's ongoing. I think one thing that is clear is that the fire being this severe was preventable. We have records of there not being working fire alarms, there not being water being shut off numerous times to the building. This has been a problem property in the village for years, and so the fire getting out of control in the way it did is preventable. And it seems that it comes from
Recording in
poor
progress.
management. So I would absolutely be supportive of whatever legal action would be appropriate flowing out of our investigation here.
Yep, go ahead.
So I just read about this building for the first time. I was not aware of the issues surrounding it. I don't want to speak for other board members, but I certainly wasn't aware of these issues. Not that we would get involved at that level. The village stands in and does what they have to do at every step of the way, and I'm sure they were prudent about how they approached this, but it does beg the question because so many things were wrong. I mean, so many things are not hitting the mark. It was a problem property, and I think the village did what they could. But moving forward, normally people would reach out. We'd hear from neighbors and things. We didn't. I didn't. I don't think the board members, we didn't receive any emails or information indicating this property was a problem. But I'm with Brian on this. I think we should look at this as carefully as possible and do whatever legal actions are necessary to hold the owners accountable. Thank you.
No, I agree. I'm sure that's something you all can bring back to us and let us know, pending the investigation, what actions can be taken from there. But yeah, I definitely would love to as well follow up to see what we can do about that. And I appreciate all the work that went into it, all the men and women who were fighting this fire, across the state of Illinois, it seems like, who helped to jump in. I really appreciate all the hard work that went in. Do we know if there were any injuries sustained by any members of the fire department?
No, sir, not at this time. No injuries to report.
And my last question was just, was there any other structural damage to other buildings surrounding the area, or any injuries there?
So there is the bike shop right next door. They did take a little bit of water in the back door from the alley, but very, very minor. And then once Public Works got out and was able to drain the alley, that solved itself.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any other? Yep.
Jim, you made me think of something. About the history of this building, and I know we have records of these violations internal. Is there any a possibility for making the violations for other buildings village-wide somewhere publicly accessible so that we can have a better transparency around potential buildings that may have issues like this in the future?
I mean, in my experience, we can look at that and try to figure out what the responsible way is to communicate, code violations throughout the village. But that could be the amount of information could be voluminous, and then we have to evaluate, what we can share and what might be, something that be subject to, protection and so forth. But, one of the things that we need to look at, and I think one of our goals is actually to provide an update to the village board and get some direction on our vacancy ordinance. This is something that's been kind of on our radar for a little while, and I think in conjunction with looking at our vacancy ordinance and properties that might have a profile like this, that we actually can maybe create a method for communicating about problem properties in the village as opposed to all properties that may have outstanding code violations, because there are several properties in the village that may have any number of code violations that we're dealing with. But in terms of properties that have a profile like this, where we have recurring problems, where, like in this instance, it's not only been code compliance staff taking continuous action towards this particular property, we've also been in court. And so we've taken court action on this particular property for probably over the last year, and now escalating at this point in time, given the fire and so forth. So I think we can, I'll work with the staff, look at, how we might be able to communicate in a way that is efficient, and I think provides, pertinent information about properties that maybe have a profile such as this. And so, yeah, we can follow up on that to see what we can do there. don't know if you want to talk about kind of where we currently are just with the 1239 in terms of court action.
So the village has a complaint pending against the owner of the property along with the bank that has a mortgage on it. The bank is in a separate foreclosure proceeding against the owner. In that court case, the village has made several requests to the judge for enhanced authority prior to the fire, to bring it into compliance. Some of those requests were granted in part, some were denied. When the requests were granted in part, the village took advantage and went out and put in smoke alarms and put in other fire prevention type things, which the people who were in the building removed. So the village did take steps to try to protect the health and safety. The village would secure the doors as allowed by court order, and then people would pry them open. So in the current posture, with the fire having occurred, the village presented an emergency request to the judge to authorize demolition and order the building owner or the bank to take it down. And the judge said, you know what, a different judge should be hearing this request. So we are now in the process of, as quickly as possible, repositioning that request before a different judge. In the law department, my office, village attorney, will continue to pursue accountability in the civil case.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Do we have a second item?
Yes, we do. Trustee Andy. The second item is we want to provide an update on some initiatives that were supported by the village board on a pilot basis during the for the FY25 calendar year that were administered by the Chamber of Commerce. And these were initiatives there were 3 initiatives: the Next Youth Internship Program, First Friday's Business District Street Festivals, and the Belen Small District Development Program to support businesses and entrepreneurs of color. And so we've asked the Chamber to conduct a presentation tonight to provide a status update on how those programs actually were implemented in 2025, and then also to answer any questions of the village board, and perhaps even give the Chamber an opportunity to articulate any continuing interest in moving these programs forward. And John Malanafi, our Assistant Village Manager of Economic Vitality, he can add any additional perspective to this. I know the Office of Economic Vitality has been working with the Chamber recently. Despite these pilot initiatives, we want to make sure that we continue to have a strong relationship with the Chamber and support our Chamber of Commerce as we move forward on all of our economic vitality initiatives. So John, you want to add to that?
Thank you, Manager Jackson. John Malanafi, Economic Vitality Manager. The Office of Economic Vitality has been working and collaborating with the Chamber on their funding request, on reviewing past programs, expenditures, effectiveness, and 2026 budget. Tonight, we have invited the Interim Executive Director, Yu-Jin Hong, and Director of Programming and Membership, Melissa Mallinson, to provide a short presentation of the Village Board on all the Chamber partnerships with the Village and their programming. So with that, I'd like to introduce Yu-Jin, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. We had prepared a beautifully colorful PowerPoint slides. Due to technical difficulties, we have emergency copies for you.
Thank you.
Oh, you did? Perfect. Thank you. We wanted to make sure. Well, good evening once again, and thank you, Manager Jackson, for this opportunity to present in front of the Board of Trustees. My name is Yu-Jin Hong. I'm the Interim Executive Director at the Chamber of Commerce. I came to the Chamber in the fall of 2025. And I'm joined by Melissa Mallinson, who will speak in just a few minutes. And we are here tonight to share a brief update on how the 2025 pilot partnership between the Chamber and the Village went, a look back at what we set out to do, the outcomes, and what we learned from the pilot experience, thanks to the Village's great investment in those programs. The pilot year focused on 2 economic strategies. First, through a paid internship program to develop workforce pipeline for local businesses called Oak Park Next Youth Internship. And secondly, targeting commercial corridor activation through the First Friday street festivals. We also had a program named Blend, which Melissa will discuss in a little bit, focusing on cultivating Black and Brown business owners and future entrepreneurs. And these initiatives were designed to increase economic activity in commercial districts and strengthen business retention with an eye toward building long-term capacity building within each district. The Oak Park Next internship program supported 12 businesses, providing structured staffing support and including more than $20,000 in wage reimbursement for the businesses. The First Friday Festival works with 4 different business districts, bringing 4 distinct public festivals throughout the summer, with 72 businesses participating at the events and drawing an estimated 5,000 attendees. It was a year full of activities, new initiatives that brought a lot of energy and participation from businesses. And my colleague Melissa has been at the center of delivering all those activities. And both of us are new, but Melissa in particular has been a miracle worker, as I like to say. So I'd like to invite her to speak about the programs more specifically.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Eugene. Today is my 1-year anniversary of employment at the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Director of Programming and Membership, and I was very honored to oversee the implementation of this partnership. As Eugene mentioned, the 3 initiatives we proposed included the Oak Park Next internship program, the First Friday Street Festivals, and Blend, which was an acronym for the Black and Latine Entrepreneurial Networking and Development. It was a cohort-based program designed to engage 20 business owners in a 10-month development process with education and speakers. So in 2025, we invested our time in content research and presenter outreach. We developed curriculum and digital assets to support the program, including an online course framework. In late summer 2025, the members of the Chamber Board met with the Development Services Department here at the Village, and we had a great discussion and brainstorming session. We acknowledged that in this year there were a lot of moving parts, and the Chamber experienced some staff transition. So we collectively made the decision to take more time to engage stakeholders and engage with potential participants and to develop a really sustainable and vibrant delivery structure for the program with the scheduling and program framework that would be accessible and feasible for small business owners. So our plan is to look to the future for possible initial activities in implementing the programs in FY26 and growing more in time. So I'm honored to speak next about the Oak Park Next internship program. So as you know, this is a business support and workforce development initiative. The Chamber served as a workforce facilitator, recruiting, screening, matching, and managing reimbursement for our small business partners. This reduced the administrative burden and the hiring risk for the businesses, who many of them have very limited staff as well. So taking on that work on their behalf with their input allowed for greater ease on both sides. As Eugene mentioned, there were 12 Oak Park-based businesses who hosted internships. Our initial information session drew more than 40 interested businesses, with 18 applying and ultimately 12 advancing in summer 2025. In the fall, an additional 6 businesses expressed interest and began to proceed with interviews and vetting. 2 of these proceeded with an internship placement, and 2 of the summer cohort businesses continued with one with the same intern, one with a new intern. Some of the feedback we received praised the quality of the intern candidates. Our busy business owners really appreciated the support with screening and scheduling interviews. More than 80% of the participating businesses expressed interest and enthusiasm in continuing the program. The others did not respond to the survey. So this program was offered to Oak Park youth aged 14 to 21. Every student applicant took part in the interview process, part of their educational and career development. The process was designed to mitigate bias and reduce discrimination with a blind review process and randomized assignments to interviewers. So many of the applicants were new to the workforce. I would say about 75% were high school students, about 25% were college students. They were eager to connect with employers in their home community. In 2025, the Chamber received 76 applications from the interested students, many of them referred from Oak Park River Forest High School. So far in 2026, we receive an average of 5 a week. So these satisfaction levels were strong among both the businesses and the participant interns. They appreciated the support, they appreciated the human connection in guiding them through the interview process and through the introductions to the businesses. So the interest in repeat participation indicates real value to our participating employers, and the continual applications from our students shows the desire to work and to form relationships within their home community. And this program really strengthened the local workforce pipeline by connecting those young residents directly to Oak Park employers, where they can develop those firsthand relationships with their local economy. I'd like to talk next about the First Fridays Street Festival series. We're thrilled with the success of the first year of First Fridays. With the village's support, the Chamber produced 4 events in different districts that do not have organized business alliances. The program's goals included supporting our local economy and area businesses, along with neighbor and community engagement. More than 5,000 attendees across the 4 events enjoyed live music from local performers and touring favorites, free family activities, local vendors and artisans, and the celebration of their unique neighborhood. Some feedback from our attendee surveys. A Southtown resident said, "Living on a main street, our area doesn't get to have block parties. This was our chance to be together and invite everyone over." A resident in the Chicago-Austin district asked us, actually just told us, continue having events in parts of Oak Park that aren't usually frequented. And a Mills Tower resident who took a break from tearing it up on the dance floor said, "Things like this are why I moved here." The First Friday series operated as a targeted economic activation initiative. Centralized coordination lowered the participation barriers for vendors and local businesses and increased visibility for the districts during evening hours. 72 business vendors held space at the 4 public events, but more were engaged throughout the process. Business district development occurred through planning meetings, integrated marketing, and ongoing event and planning communications. The district planning meetings had 251 invitees. 43 businesses were represented in attendance, and these meetings included review and revision of the preliminary site plans, marketing ideas, and a lot of vibrant discussion, connection, and ideation that directly influenced the production of the events. In addition to those who participated directly as vendors, other district businesses reported benefits from the increased foot traffic and community engagement. There were robust takeout sales from street-based businesses like the Daily Bagel, Avenue Ale House, Pour Phil's, and Churro Oak Park, as people interacted with those businesses, bought their takeout, brought it to the lawn, and sat and enjoyed the music and the bouncy houses. So Eugene is going to share more about our partnership and our goals.
Thanks, Melissa, and thank you again for all your excellent work. I feel a little out of breath just hearing about all the activities that the Chamber has done over the last year. So why a strong Chamber and Village partnership matters. When I was contacted in the fall about this potential opportunity with the Chamber of Commerce, I jumped at it in a heartbeat because I had been living in Chicago for 20 plus years and had admired Oak Park from a distance, but never really had a chance to get to know it. And I knew that Oak Park was a community that speaks out, speaks up, cares about not only their residents, but care deeply about their local economy. And chambers of commerces can be sleepy organizations, but not the Oak Park River Forest Chamber of Commerce. And with 5+ monthly networking activities and the member services that the chamber provides, I was struck by how involved this chamber is in working with the Village of Oak Park and Village of River Forest. And when I heard about this partnership initiative, I was very impressed. So when I think about the chamber and the village partnership, economic vitality requires coordination and collaboration, and particularly when public and private sectors work together, the impact is greater. And a strong chamber of commerce in the community provides, as demonstrated in our pilot year experience, provide a real structured support for local businesses and serving as a connective tissue between business owners and public leadership. It also helps develop local workforce pipeline by connecting young residents directly to Oak Park employers, providing more opportunities for them to keep their roots here. Oak Park is a place where they can live, grow up, not only grow up and live, but also work and raise families. So all in all, when the village and the chamber work together, economic vitality can become intentional, measurable, and sustainable. And building on this foundation, the pilot year established and demonstrated that business owners are eager to participate and engage, and this partnership provided direct economic investment through our local business owners. And the first year also gave us really valuable insights and lessons. We identified opportunities for closer coordination with the village offices, clearer logistical planning, gained new insights about how to deepen our engagement with business owners and to reach broader community impact. And with refinements, the partnership is positioned to directly support the village's priorities around business retention, attraction, commercial corridor vitality, inclusive business growth, and marketing of Oak Park as a place to live and work. So the foundation is in place. And now we hope to and look forward to building on it with intention in collaboration with you and hoping that the pilot can turn into momentum into long-term structured partnership. So thank you for your time and attention this evening, and we're happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yeah. The first Friday festivals were awesome, and definitely want to continue to see how we can work on having more of these events outside of just sort of our main downtown area. I did have a question on Oak Park Next. What was the level of participation from the interns in some of the networking events that the chamber puts on? Because obviously one of the real opportunities here, in addition to sort of an introduction to the workforce, is a broader introduction to the business community and identifying mentors who may help them progress in their careers.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Melissa to come up and share a little bit about that. She is the real master of these programs.
Yes, in the pilot year, we had some meetups between interns. We did not invite interns to any business networking events where alcohol was present. That's just my boundary. Though in some ideas that we're hoping for in the future include a presentation by interns of their learning and projects that they developed within their internship. Perhaps a ceremony where they can invite their families and other business owners and community members and continue to grow. So we're very open to ideas and recommendations, and if that includes scheduling some new events that are alcohol-free, we can make that happen.
Sure, and that's a understandable boundary. I do think that the creating more of those opportunities for those folks to network, so that this what may be a first job can also turn into that second job and that continued professional growth. So that is certainly one direction I'd love to see this grow in the future, because I think that this mentorship is really important, and it's about growing that network, because I think we recognize that one of the advantages that many young people in our community do have is they have access to sometimes their parents' professional networks, and so folks who don't necessarily have that same access, that's one of the things that this program can be providing, and so I'd love for us to focus on that aspect of it as we grow the partnership.
Absolutely. I'd like to add that we hope also for more focused and intense coordination with the pre-vocational services at the local high school. In addition to there's a business club and a business incubator course. And also, I got a lot of kids of the Model UN program who are really, really interested in the broader economy and community engagement, not just from kind of the entrepreneurial perspective, but as the picture of a kind of a holistic, vibrant citizenship experience. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I was one of the co-sponsors of all these programs here at the board, along with then Trustee Robinson, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to hear like the data and the readout here on how these programs went and the things that they accomplished. This is far better than I even expected at the time. I knew it was going to be great. This is awesome. And, I just want to, there's a couple of things I want to dive in on that I felt like were amazing, and I felt like we should use to drive whatever the next iteration of this is. 76 applicants, right? We only ended up placing 14. We ended up placing 14. That's amazing. But the demand, right, is incredible. So what I'd like to see is us figure out how to get more of those 76 folks placed, because there's obviously, and you're saying you're getting 5 applications a week, right? That matches up with what I've seen when I'm engaging with the kids over at the high school, right? A lot of those folks at the civics fair, the 2 things that they ask for almost immediately are, what are the volunteer opportunities and what are the internship opportunities, right? And, that I think that demand in this community has largely been below the surface, right, in terms of visibility. Probably for one of the reasons that Trustee Straw mentioned, right? There's a lot of kids here, a lot of people here who have access to their parents' professional networks, right? And I think because there are so many kids here who do have that access, the kids who don't have that access don't get seen, right? And so that need goes unmet. Well, it had been going unmet, right? And we see that need is much bigger than we probably expected. Much greater, and that it continues, right? This wasn't just one summer thing or 1 year thing. Like we had the summer, then you had more interns, showing up for the fall. You have more businesses showing up for the fall, and you're getting still 5 applications a week right now, So this to me is not a flash in the pan. This isn't an accident. It's not a one-time thing. This is what we did is we showed we exposed the demand here, the continuous demand for this program. And I'd really like to see what happens as the next iteration of it, because I think this pilot has been successful, and I'd like for us to grow it, right? I'd like next time when you are all up here are presenting, and we're looking at the numbers, and we're saying we had 150 applications, and we placed 100 of them, right, or what have you. I would like to see, I'm just enthusiastic, right? So this is great. I really, really appreciate it. I love the fact that we had 18 businesses signing up. I love the 80% number, and what I love about the 80+% number is that you didn't get any negative responses, right? Like you just got no responses, which to me says maybe I was busy, right? Like we can't assume that that just because you didn't respond to a survey that you actually had negative things to say. Typically, the people with negative things to say respond to the survey, right?
Yes.
So the fact that we got an 80% positive rate with the rest remaining as no response, I consider like a huge, huge, huge success. So kudos, well done. This has really, really exceeded my expectations. First Fridays, amazing, right? COVID and coming out of COVID, right? I'm on the board of SIAPCO, a local nonprofit over in the Southeast Oak Park area, and we run Berry Fest. And what I learned from being involved with that board is that coming out of COVID is that community is not, community is intentional, right? It doesn't just exist because it has existed. It doesn't just exist if you leave it, right? Like you have to actually work at it. And so when we came out of COVID, we really worked hard at bringing Berry Fest back and getting it, bringing it back to the level and exceeding the level to where it was pre-COVID. That to me showed a lot of what you need to do in order to create community. And I think when you create community and when you take those steps for it to be intentional, like you bring, that's really definition, right? You bring so many people together. But when you get in all these folks together, you're also teaching and learning, and you break down walls, right? Walls that you don't even know exist because people are mixing, right? And people are talking and people are getting to know each other. People who probably sometimes only saw each other in social media, right? See each other in person, and all of a sudden it's like, I didn't like that thing that you said, but I actually like you as a person, right? And, and so the more community we can get, the better it is, especially the more real world community. And, these First Friday street festivals in areas of the village that typically don't see this level of community participation, don't see this level of party, right? And we killed it, right? The business participation killed it, right? The audience, the attendees, right? Like this just again exceeded my expectations, right? And I don't think I've heard anyone say anything negative about either of these programs, any of these programs. And so, and all I've heard about the First Fridays were we need to do that more often. So. Again, kudos. I really appreciate the work that went into this to make it successful. We wrote checks, but you got and staff participated a lot too. I don't want to discount that, Kevin. I know there's a lot of staff participation on the back end that helped with this too. But I know you guys were boots on the ground, right? And you really put the effort in to make this successful too. And so I just really appreciate that, and I wanted to elevate that and say thank you. And I'm looking forward to Blend. So let me know what we can do.
Thank you. We really appreciate your enthusiasm, support, and I do want to thank Nomi Diaz for her unfailing care, professionalism, enthusiasm, guidance throughout the summer. She and Craig made our experience with implementing these programs as smooth as possible. We had some very tight timelines and some bumps in the road, but we're very pleased with their partnership and very grateful.
Well, also thank you to Nomi and Craig. I see you guys up there hiding, but I will call you out and say thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for everybody's efforts to make these programs so successful. I do have a couple questions, mostly about the internship program. I agree with what my colleagues have said in terms of the benefit that I envision and what this would be for our youth in our community. Can you talk about the intentionality of making sure that the young people who are getting these opportunities are the young people who need them most, and also what kind of supports, and maybe this is like a co-question for village staff too, the supports in terms of transition, onboarding, challenges along the way. I'm interested in both, like, how do we make it successful, but specifically to our shared goals of making sure that the students who otherwise wouldn't have another kind of internship opportunity are taking advantage of this one.
Excuse me. Yes, that is a shared goal with the chamber also, with all of our members. Local, we know who are parents, we know whose kids are involved, and that was why we designed the process of interviewing, screening. So we removed names, we randomized, we had a pool of interviewers who would be assigned an interviewee and kind of matched up in a meeting with a script that they would follow that was scored the same for everybody. So we asked everyone to stick to kind of the structure so that no one would get into like, oh yeah, I know your dad, he and I worked together at this thing and whatnot. So structurally, we wanted to make sure that it was open and not kind of tied by those networking biases. In terms of the placements, we assigned each business 4 interns. It turned out that none of the business owners had met any of the 4 interns. And even if they met somebody, or even if they found someone that they wanted to hire through the program, we still asked everybody to go to all the interviews just to have the experience of developing their interview skills, of meeting different business owners, just the process of embodying what it's like to walk into a place, say, hi, my name is, I'm here for an interview, and to go through. That is a form of professional development, even if it doesn't result in the job. That is a life skill, to be able to talk to strangers, to go into a space that teenagers are still growing and developing. Through the process, we, again, every student got an interview. Every student got a chance to talk to someone, to share their information. They completed an application form and had the chance to speak about who they were, what their strengths are. The interview questions were structured not around tell us your experience, how much work have you done, but what are your strengths, what are your goals, what's an example of how you faced your goals, and everything from sure, there were some young people who, talked about, a school trip that they went on, which indicates a certain level of privilege, being able to go and, afford a big trip. And others who talked about, helping their siblings get out the door and get to school before they did, even though it made them late. That was a win. That was a success. And that didn't rely on any kind of inherited or acquired privilege to get into the next step of the job. As students were selected for, the interview pool, kind of based on what the business owners were looking for, what fields they expressed interest in, whether it was restaurant, retail, professional services. They had the opportunity to show that, so that's how we kind of made the matches for the in-person interviews. And we provided some development sessions. They were virtual, since the students responded better to showing up at a virtual meeting, with what it's like to go to an interview, and then and more development sessions for the job process, about, okay, ask questions, just what it's like to start at a new job, what are the types of things you do, what are the types of things you should look for, depending on the business, it could be anything from how does the cash register work to where is the employee manual, to anything kind of specific to that industry. So I think one of the opportunities is to continue supporting the young people. We also had regular check-ins, phone calls, texts, drop-in visits where we would say, you know, how's it going? What are you doing? There was one student who dropped out, and we kind of worked with both the employer and the young person through the process about, okay, you know, sometimes things just aren't the right fit. Here's how we go through this process. Here's what you ask for. You need to give your key back, things like that. So we were really committed to kind of balancing that direct one-on-one support with kind of a broader structure that would be open and clear for all the students to kind of get what they need and for all the businesses to have, that support of their young people.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering too if there is another iteration, how outreach recruitment might be a little bit more targeted if we are partnering with the high school, talking to staff and mentors there to make connections rather than just like the business club where the kids are already like engaged with maybe some activities. Maybe there could be some more intentional targeting of young folks who otherwise wouldn't have even know about the opportunity. I mean, that's a huge barrier, right? Like I know folks who send their kids applications to summer jobs and internships, and they do those. I mean, you look on the Oak Park Working Moms Facebook page, you'll see moms looking for jobs for their kids. So let's help the kids whose moms, dads, grown-ups, don't have that effort going. Just an idea. I wasn't here I wasn't on the board when this was first presented, and I was introduced to the program through Chris Thomas. And I'm curious if you could tell us about if Your Passion First is going to be involved in like next iteration planning. I know him as a mentor and for young folks, so I'm curious if that is still in the works or not?
Yes, to go back to your earlier thoughts about student outreach at the high school. Last year, we did participate in the job fair. I think we missed it this year, but we are working closely. They have a job posting board. They have other internal promotion and kind of communication strategies so that jobs are shared with all students, not just within kind of select groups. As for deeper mentorship, yes, I know Chris also, he's one of our members and community partners. At this time, we don't have a formal agreement in place. We have had some great exploratory conversations with him and with other stakeholders in the community who are working in the youth development space. So as we continue to grow the program, we'll look for alignment to make sure that young people get the support they need, that our business owners get the resources that they need, and any other supports around, developing job descriptions, how to, observe best practices in working with young people. So yes, we're looking forward to continuing to enrich the program with future partnerships. We don't have anything formal in place at this time.
Are we going to maybe see another round of proposal for next year? Is that where this is heading?
Yeah. So let me help a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think tonight what we're doing is. And by the way, I think the chamber does have a proposal. We don't have funding in the budget. We didn't adopt funding in the budget to continue the programs into this year. If the board is interested in reinvesting in these initiatives, then we would need to do a budget amendment to add the funding to support these programs. We do have the benefit of working together last year and learning from that, and some of the questions that are coming up tonight, I think, relate to some of that learning, where we can actually kind of work a little bit more in partnership and on design questions and so forth, right, to optimize where we left off, if the board is actually interested in reinvesting in these initiatives, at least for another year. So we don't have an actual schedule for bringing a proposal back. I think this is a starting point for the conversation. We did pledge last year that once we finish the year, that we would come back and give the chamber an opportunity to report out on how things went. So really just trying to gauge interest in moving forward. And if there is still some interest in moving forward, then certainly we could, come back with a refined proposal on whichever one of the initiatives or all three.
And the main reason I ask too is timing, because like we have to sign our little kids up for stuff in February. So
Sure.
summer's around, if we're looking at summer 2026, that's the main reason I'm curious where we are in our calendar.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I think it's, it would be accelerated. I think like Melissa indicated, there's no formal agreements, but there have been like some preliminary conversations. I think really it's about whether or not we have funding support to advance the work. And if there is still an interest in investing in the work, then I think, it would be fast-paced to try to put something together, but we would make an effort to do that.
The only other real brief thing I want to add before I turn off is if it comes back, if a formal proposal comes back, I would like to hear from the staff members who participated and get some feedback from your all perspective, both on like what went well. I mean, the numbers, speak for themselves to an extent, but in terms of your experience, if the investment of your time was, worth it in your opinion, and that kind of perspective, I would like to hear in the next conversation. Thank you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. We can share our perspectives. I think Jen, she kind of hit on, there is some alignment with kind of our board priorities around trying to create more opportunities in business districts that don't otherwise have them, and bring greater vitality in those areas. And then also, despite what we decide to do with these three initiatives, the Blend program relates to providing strategic support to small women and minority-owned businesses, and through our economic vitality strategies that's been updated, we would actually come back, despite what we want to do with these three pilot initiatives. I think the Economic Vitality Office is going to continue to work with the Chamber to come back with program proposals to support those businesses, those segments of the communities, those business segments of the community, because we just have a stake in providing that support to those businesses. So the Blend program, I think, is still something that we want to pursue because it's in our goals. The business districts and creating more vitality there, we have an interest in that. And then certainly we always have an interest in providing youth development opportunities. And if it's just that there was the one-time pilot investment, if there's an interest in continuing, then we'll jump right in and take advantage of the opportunity to try to co-design something that is responsive to the board's interests and some of the questions that you're raising about recruitment and outreach and partnerships and so forth.
May I just offer a quick comment? Thank you. And I agree with Manager Jackson's comments, and I really appreciate all your questions. I think you're asking all the right questions. One of the lessons we learned at the Chamber is the absolute necessity of working very closely with the village office teams and vet our proposals and ideas thoroughly from the logistical perspective, operational perspective, resource allocation perspective before we come to the board with a proposal. And so now that we're working closely with John, Michael, and Nicole with the Economic Vitality Department, which is also recently new to the village. The Chamber team is mostly new. Melissa here with 1 year experience under her belt is our veteran at the Chamber of Commerce. And so we have a lot of enthusiasm, but also we recognize the need to be thoughtful and careful and vet all ideas left and right and front and back, upside down, before we come to you all. But I really appreciate all your supportive and encouraging comments, and we look forward to coming back with next steps.
Yeah, no. Devon?
I just have a quick comment. So I appreciate the cautiousness of the approach and your careful weighing of everything at this point. I appreciate getting this earlier so we could do it in our budget and not do a budget amendment. That's all I want to say. That's not the preferred method of funding, right? So in the future, if this is going to continue, we should do that, have a summary in the fall, and then move forward. So that's all. I wasn't involved with the original part. I wasn't on the board then. Sounds encouraging, but in the future, perhaps do it sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick here. Love it. Seems great. We should keep doing it. So start there. I'm also relatively new, so I wasn't here, and I was just looking back at the February last year when this was budgeted, and I was just, the question I had was, well, what was the cost of it? And I saw it was a $250,000 program. The first question I have, because I see three things listed there, and forgive me if everybody else knows this and I don't, is Blend the same thing as the Black and Latino Business Support Program? Is that the same thing?
That is
okay,
it.
just has a name change basically
Yes.
between. Okay, got it. And I didn't see stats about that. Is that hasn't happened yet? Is that correct?
The program was conceptually developed and planned to launch in 2025. The chamber did go through significant staffing and leadership transitions, and so without adequate capacity to deliver on the program, we consulted with Naomi and Craig's office and agreed that it would be best to pause for now and take additional time to launch it.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking through the breakdown, and I guess I'm just trying to get a little bit ahead of what the proposal might look like, for next time around. It was $32,000 for the first Friday, so that's about like 4 events, so like $8,000 for an event. It actually seems. Is that? Did you change it? It's not. It was more than that.
Right. Yeah, the initial proposal as a pilot initiative outlined some projected expenses around the event production, but the narrative mentions that the village would be responsible for kind of the related municipal expenses. We did not have actuals for that at this time. So we, now that we have produced the 4 events and have, incurred those expenses. So any future proposals would be based on actuals about what that cost.
I want Naomi to actually kind of address this because this was part of kind of the startup process because this proposal came at the last minute, and so we were in a different position than we are in now. In that now we have some learning. Before we didn't have an opportunity to kind of work together, and kind of what you, Jen, was describing, where we actually have open line of communication, we're collaborating, we're talking about logistics and so forth, so we have a better understanding. So we had to update those numbers from the original proposal to reflect some of the other village costs that are related to advancing the initiatives. Naomi?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Naomi Diaz, Business Services Manager. As Manager Jackson noted, the original contract amount for just the operational expenses that the Chamber had to host the Black and Latina Business Support Program, or Blend, the First Fridays and the Youth Internship Program were all for $250,000 to $250,000. Year to date, they expended only $135,000 of that contract amount. And that is strictly only for the First Fridays and the youth internship because the Blend program did not kick off. Now, in terms of village expenses that were not incorporated to the contract amount, so staff timing, that is a component that was not factored into that $250,000. That came out to be $15,984,000. For
our staff?
Yeah, for our staff. Cool. And then in terms of permit costs, that was $1,100 that we waived in permit fees. And that was special event permit fees, tent fees, health inspection fees, all that great stuff. And then the police support, which also is not factored into the staffing. So staffing time captures my time, development services, the health department, fire, and public works. And then for police specifically, so at the First Friday's events, we had police presence there. That came out to be a total of about $2,800. So total overall costs approximately came down to an additional $19,936.
Okay.
Plus the $135.
Okay, great, cool. What happens to the difference, the delta, the $250 minus the $135? Did we not give that to the chamber?
Correct. So the remaining delta went back to our fund balance, so that at the end of the year, when the fiscal year is closed, that amount gets relieved from the purchase order, from the contract, and goes right back to fund balance.
Okay, excellent. That's great. I'd love to hear that. the youth internship program had an allocation of 149,000. Do you know how much of that was actually allocated in the year?
149,000. So about half of that was allocated to the youth internship program.
I guess like 75.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of what the sort of like ROI is, because I saw $20,000 in, like, I think it was called wage reimbursements. Was that what it was? And so the difference there is, I guess, the program
Correct.
overhead. So like
Yep.
55K in program overhead.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Just getting a sense of like where things are falling. So okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments from Trustee Taglia, but I know you were talking, Eugene kind of made a statement that I think is consistent with our perspective. I think if this initiative was ready during the budget process, we would have brought it then. So we're bringing it when it's ready.
Appreciate all of the work that went into this. I think, we talked a little bit about how do we hear about these things. I know I was last week at the Black Professionals Day at OPRF. This was something I brought up when youth asked, especially one of the first questions we asked were, who were seniors in the group, who had already applied to college, had they already, indicated whether they had done any internships or anything like that. And you quickly saw like almost a worry in some kids' eyes, and they're like, we're supposed to do those things? So, even though they have the counselors, even though they have mentors, it's always something where you could tell them 10 times over, but our kid is probably going to listen to somebody else's parent or somebody else who tells them the information. So when I brought it up, as well as who was in my group was Jeffrey Hines, from our local State Farm agent and member of the chamber, and he said the exact same thing, reinforcing we both talked about this internship and this opportunity for youth to take advantage of. And you saw that like light hit at some of these kids, and they were like, okay, when it's available, it's like, go to the chamber site, not knowing if we, I expect we are going to fund this again so that we can give these opportunities and continue to see this, this passing of the garb to the next generation of kids. But also want to make sure we are engaging, the other high school in Oak Park, Fenwick too. They deserve to have these opportunities as well. So hopefully we can figure a way to get into their school and integrated into this same program if that opportunity is something they want to take advantage of. I do think all Oak Parkers that can take advantage should. And since you did say the age does go up to 21, are we engaging Triton College and the vocational schools that we've been talking about, just to make sure that there are those connections made? Because like I said, it depends on where you see it. Maybe you see it on the library message board. Maybe you see it, on Village Hall's newsletter. But we just have to figure out how to get it to people. We know we're doing it, and we know that you all are doing this good work. It's just sometimes people don't know. Yeah. So thank you for it. I do appreciate it. I think it's amazing, and would love to continue to see it grow. I'm echoing all the same words. I know we came at a last minute ask to get this done and to get this pushed through the door, but I think that the numbers that you're seeing do indicate that there is an interest. I know if I were a kid, this would have been something I would have done in a second, just to create those doors that need to happen. One of the things we told these kids about in our groups were the importance of networking. And making sure that you start early. It's not always what you know. Sometimes it really does come down to who you know. So making sure that they start this process of learning to ask these questions, to reach out to those within their community, because that's the easier yes than the one you're going to have later down the line in life. So thank you all. I appreciate the work that went into this. Thank you, staff, for working with the Oak Park River Forest Chamber of Commerce to make this happen. Last question for you. Is there an age? One of the things the kids said to me, some of them actually had their own businesses. Some of them were already making $5,000 and $10,000 within a year for their new business, and wanting to know, how old do you have to be to join the Chamber of Commerce?
I say if you own a business and have a license from the Village of Oak Park.
We'll check our bylaws.
Yeah.
And yes, I think there is, to my knowledge, there is no minimum age limit, and the chamber would be open to creating a student level membership with an affinity group and support designed around their needs.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your comments, and please, feel free to refer young people to the Chamber of Commerce and we'll help them connect with the appropriate business owner.
100%.
Even if we don't have the internship program at the moment.
100% we will be doing that. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Enya. Thank you, Jen, Melissa.
Thank you very much.
All right, I think
That concludes the report.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Village Manager Jackson. So do we have any vacancies for any of our commission, or are we filling any vacancies today? Quick Waters? No? All right. So I think that will take us to consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, or? I moved.
Yep.
Yeah.
We need to take a roll, or all in favor? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You got a second. You did it. You get the motion.
Trustee Wesley?
Yeah.
Yes.
Trustee Loving Jacobson?
Yes.
Trustee Eater?
Yes.
Trustee Straw?
Yes.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
And President Pro Tem Enya?
Yes. All right, that will take us to our regular agenda, item E, 26-142, study session on home ownership programs, part 2. Do I need a motion? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
No, that's right. That's okay. Yeah, so President Pro Tem Enya and trustee members, this is a study session on homeownership programs. Staff has a specific recommendation. This is, I think, a significant step forward to advancing the strategic vision for housing that was adopted by the board in 2024. Jonathan Birch, Assistant Village Manager, Neighborhood Services Director, is going to present this item. We'll accept any feedback, but hopefully get some direction from the board on moving forward with the homeownership program that's being recommended by staff. There are several components to it that make up the framework, and we're excited about advancing these initiatives. Jonathan.
Good evening, all.
Do we have a public comment? Sorry, before that. I think we have
Yes, we do.
Michael.
Michael Bailey?
Good evening, President Pro Tem Enya and members of the board. My name is Michael Bailey, Local Government Affairs Director for the Oak Park Area Association of Realtors. It's been about a year since we gathered here to discuss ways to support homeownership in Oak Park. I'd like to begin with a simple comparison of when we were then and when we are now. Last year, the median sales price in Oak Park was $423,000. Today, it's $445,000. That's a 22% increase in just 12 months. At that time, we had a 1.4-month total supply of housing inventory. Today, we have less than a month. A healthy housing market has about a 6 to 8 month housing supply on average. When moving is considered too expensive, residents stay put longer. When people stay in their homes longer, there are fewer homes on the market. With this in mind, staff recommendations for first-time homebuyer assistance must be coupled with efforts to unlock existing housing supply. The housing ladder is broken here in Oak Park. First-time buyers, move-up families, and seniors are affected most by the lack of housing mobility. When seniors cannot downsize, families cannot move up. When families cannot move up, first-time buyers are locked out. Seniors that do want to move to a condo are then competing with first-time home buyers, and that cycle continues. This is where our transfer tax proposal comes into play. Our white paper on transfer tax refunds was sent out with the staff memo. I want to be clear here. Realtors are not asking you to eliminate the transfer tax. We are proposing a targeted mobility incentive with guardrails. a refund cap of $2,000 with a 1-year application period, limited strictly to owner-occupied properties and only for sellers who move within the Village of Oak Park. And it excludes investors and large non-owner-occupied multifamily properties. This approach will limit the impacts on the village revenue while making a significant impact for residents. Oak Park homeowners are pinching pennies now more than ever. Families are in their starter homes longer than they had planned. Seniors are not downsizing as they had planned. Again, the ladder is broken. Incentivizing housing mobility unlocks supply for the first-time home buyers that we're proposing to help. Without this vital component aimed at unlocking existing supply, down payment assistance is akin to providing a gift card to a restaurant that has no reservations. This is not a developer subsidy. This is not a tax repeal. This is a capped, owner-focused mobility tool. We respectfully ask you to reconsider the recommendation and give this proposal deeper review. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Zavajnovic. I am designated managing broker of River Elm Properties and manage a lot of properties here in Oak Park. But I also wanted to bring to the board's attention, I am an elected official in Elmwood Park. I'm a village trustee. And the Village of Elmwood Park has had the transfer tax rebate program for property owners and sellers that buy and sell within their community for the past 30 years. There is no cap on the amount that's refunded. And the pure elation that residents see knowing that there is no penalty for them to invest and maybe move up in the town that they've planted roots in, or any penalty for those who maybe can't afford their larger home, want to purchase a condo and stay in town. This has been able to just keep our residents planted. It brings generations. I mean, we've created generational roots for many a different family. And although there's some concerns, I'm sure staff has some concerns regarding the impact it could have upon your levy or your overall budget. It has not hurt us. As a matter of fact, our real estate market and transfer tax revenue has blown through its ceiling for the past 4 years. And that's coupled with increasing property values, COLA adjustments, so on and so forth. So I'm here tonight as a trade professional, but also feel that I wanted to add a little bit something to you guys because I am on the other side of this dais, once a month myself. So I want to let you know that it works well for us, and I think it could work well for Oak Park. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Jonathan Birch, Neighborhood Services Director. As part of the materials you received tonight included both a PowerPoint presentation as well as a memo that sort of went into detail about all the recommendations that staff are coming forward with. I'm just going to try and sort of verbally walk through them, given sort of the technical difficulties tonight. Obviously, this is all rooted back in recommendations that came out of both the previous round of village board goals as well as the strategic vision for housing. And those goals and those documents specifically were calling out the importance of addressing both the affordability component of homeownership as well as a racial and ethnic equity component, recognizing the disparities that currently exist in homeownership rates here in Oak Park and the access to homeownership here in the village. About a year ago, maybe slightly more than a year ago by a few weeks, we had a study session with the village board where we had folks from local realtors present as well as folks from the Illinois Housing Development Authority and folks from the Community Partners for Affordable Housing talk about different models and different approaches to incentivizing affordable homeownership and addressing the racial and ethnic ownership gap disparity that exists here in Oak Park. And out of that conversation, staff really then focused in on sort of like 5 different areas for future evaluation. But our starting point for that conversation was how to evaluate success. So really trying to start at that place overall. Since the initial starting point was sort of like two pieces, one around disparity and one around affordability. We are proposing two different measures to evaluate the success of any programs that we would move forward with. One around affordability was rooted very much in what you may know of as the Illinois Housing Development Authority's calculations that it does to monitor or assess community affordability, with some slight modifications to address some challenges in the U.S. Census data primarily that they use in order to do that calculation. And overall, making the recommendation here that given market dynamics, the staff recommends that we have a goal of supporting 250 homeowners earning less than 120% of AMI, accessing homeownership here in our community over the next 5 years. And this sort of comes out of both looking at the potential supply increases that could be coming as the village explores zoning and other changes through the Shape Oak Park project, things that could be coming in the future, as well as recognizing the challenging market dynamics here right now where housing prices continue to increase, in part driven to, as the realtors mentioned moments ago, challenges around supply, and making sure that even being able to tread water as it relates to affordability would be progress from where the community has been over the past few years. The second recommendation is specifically around equity and goes back to the idea of that sort of initial disparity that we were looking at as sort of a driving factor behind the reason that this was a goal for the village board and was a strategy included in the strategic vision for housing. And specifically recognizing that while the long-term goal would be to be able to increase home ownership rates here in Oak Park so that that disparity does not exist, that is challenging to achieve over a 5-year period, given the larger societal context that we exist in. Given that, our recommendation was to try and at least meet the bare minimum, which is regional levels, where the disparity continues to exist, but at least is narrowed, which would... There's a table that's included on page 4 as well as in the presentation itself that highlights what that net increase would be in terms of the number of homeowners over the next 5 years based off of different categorizations of race and ethnicity. Now, what programs itself would we recommending? The first is related to homebuyer education. Again and again, we heard that this really is sort of the cornerstone, the core of any activities that we should be thinking about related to homeownership here in Oak Park, specifically related to not just talking about the once-a-month class that you might see, but being able to provide deeper counseling and support of that as well. And so really, in turn, we are talking about being able to partner with a local entity to be able to provide homeownership counseling and education here in Oak Park. So that could include 6 homeownership sessions where we're doing those sort of once-a-month classes, but would also include funding to support that ongoing deeper education and support to make sure someone is being assessed around pre-purchase counseling. Are they ready to buy? Navigation of the home buying process, and then post-purchase counseling, which is you got the house or you got the condo. Now what do you do? How do you stay in it? The other portion that we're talking about there is as well as making sure that there's intentional affirmative marking of Oak Park ownership opportunities to diversify the pool of buyers that are aware of those sorts of opportunities here in Oak Park. We recommend as part of this proposal that this would cost about $125,000 a year as we looked out at other programs around the region, with those funds coming from the general fund. Funds were potentially included in that already in the neighborhood services budget for 2026, anticipating that we would come forward with this type of recommendation. The next component and the thing I should add around that is that we anticipate that 90 home buyers would attend the program a year, supporting about 450 home buyers over a 5-year period here in Oak Park. The next recommendation relates to down payment assistance. Again, there are existing programs already that exist in the region, including those provided through Cook County, through the Federal Home Loan Bank, private lenders, and the Illinois Housing Development Authority. As we assessed homeownership and down payment assistance opportunities, one of the things we came back again and again was the sheer level and amount of subsidy that was necessary in order to support down payment assistance for the single-family homeowner occupied stock here in Oak Park. And so our recommendation really is targeted to the most affordable remaining segment of the village's ownership housing stock, which is in the condominium space. So our recommendation was to specifically include or specifically do a $6,000 down payment assistance program, affordable to owners, really targeted to owners making between 70 and 120% of the area median income. We would focus this on first-time home buyers here in Oak Park and assess in future years based off of how the program is progressing, whether or not we would consider further targeting that to first-generation home buyers. There is some literature that's out there that says that you could just focus on first-time home buyers, which was the discussion we had with the Housing Programs Advisory Committee, but there's also research that suggests that it may be beneficial eventually to pivot to the first-generation home buyer, which is it's first-time home buyer, slightly bigger circle, first-generation home buyer, slightly smaller circle inside of that. We propose to set aside $96,000 a year for the next 5 years from the trust fund in order to pay for this, assisting approximately 16 households a year or 80 households over that total time period. Again, the down payment assistance would be flexible. We chose $6,000 based in part on typical sales prices that we see for condominiums here in Oak Park, recognizing that ideally we would have that program as something that could then be paired with the Illinois Housing Development Authority's existing programs that are already available, so that we're getting close to that $12,000 amount, which gets us closer to a 5 or 10% down payment. The next program that we've outlined in here, and I should just say this because you're hearing me talk about all these different programs. One of the things that we really walked away with is, as with a lot of things, there's no silver bullet to fixing affordable home ownership here in Oak Park. It's about cobbling together many different things that together add up to a whole that allows us to address this problem, but rather than trying to say like this one thing will just fix it. So the next one is actually called the Mortgage Credit Certificate Program. So this is an existing federal tax credit program that helps to make ownership more affordable to lower and moderate income first-time home buyers and veterans. And it provides a credit on your federal tax return of up to a maximum of $2,000. And this is paid for in part or generated in part by the private activity bond cap that the village is provided with annually through the state. This is something where it gives us the authority to be able to enter into private activity bonds in order to fund things like economic development and housing activity. But if the village does not use that because it receives a new cap amount every year, that money simply goes to the state. And then the state can do with it whatever the state chooses to do with it. Right now, the village historically has not done anything with that private activity bond cap. We have an option every year where the state sends out a letter and basically says, hey, are y'all doing anything with this? And if not, they recapture it at a certain point sometime around midsummer, July, June, in that time period. Instead, what we were proposing is there's an organization called Assist Illinois. I'll double check the name here. Where Illinois Assist, which is created and sort of managed initially by the town of Normal, but is a consortium of different counties and municipalities around the state that then contribute their private activity bond cap on a 4-to-1 basis. For every $4 of activity we give, then they can write $1 of new mortgages in order to then support those tax credits in the future. We've seen towns around the state be able to make use of this. We think it would be beneficial here in Oak Park, creating that opportunity for people who are purchasing here in Oak Park, if they go through the Illinois Assist Homeownership Program, to then be able to access this tax credit and be able to receive this as a benefit come tax time. We have seen different variations. Illinois Assist between 2021 and 2024 assisted approximately 256 homeowners a year in terms of actually buying homes here in town or in the state. But as we chatted with other towns, it seems like there has been a wide variation. There's actually been years where people get lots and lots of applications. You'll have 20 or 30, and years where they have almost none, particularly as interest rates rose in that 2022, 2023 into 2024 time period. So our recommendation is to enter into this program. It is something where the village doesn't do it forever. It is something where the board must take an action annually every year in order to allocate the new private activity bond cap that has been provided to the village for that year to Illinois Assist to then undertake that for another year's worth of activities. So it would mean, from a timing perspective, taking this sort of action in March or April of this year, providing that over, that would then ensure for the next 12 months, homeowners here in town operating through that program could get access to that in order to reduce the effective mortgage rate of, or the effective payments that they have for their homes, right? So the principal and interest that they're paying through the credit that's provided with them. And then we'd have to go through this whole process again a year from now, then again. The next recommendation that we had was specifically related to the real estate transfer tax, and we provided sort of a detailed evaluation of that in the memo and the documents that were provided. We looked at a variety of different components, including a lot of great information was provided by local realtors specifically around that program. But one of the things we really came to was we did see sort of two elements as we looked at other examples around the region that seemed like they best aligned with our goals as a community. The first was specifically around the idea of capping the total amount of the refund, something that's done by Lake Forest, to ensure that really think about who is ultimately receiving the benefit and on how much home value relative to the resources that that person may have, relative to the value of that home. And then the second one, which is the question of whether or not to provide the credit to the buyer or the seller. Most towns provide it on the seller side of things, right? You lived in a home or you sold a condo here in town, then you choose to purchase into another unit, like was described by the realtors, you can then access that credit at that time, or refund at that time. The one example that we saw that was different was Sandwich, where they instead, Sycamore, where they provide it on the buyer's side. So that means that someone who's renting here in town could then say, oh, I'm buying here in town, can I get access to the refund? And the answer is yes. Whereas right now, if you follow the model in most towns, if you don't already own, you can't also then get access to it. You have to have been able to at least get in the first place. So we evaluated a program looking actually back at real estate transfer tax data collected by the village in terms of where buyers are located when they're coming into town based off of what they fill out on their paperwork, what they tell us, which is like, hey, you're moving into town where you're applying for this, applying for the transfer tax information, and evaluated what that would be. We provided a memo in there that showed what their percent revenue reduction related to this program would be with each of those components included that we outlined here. And you can see what that is. It ranges from 20% to 8% over the period between 2020 and 2024. It's on page 12 of the memo if you're looking that up. So you can see what that would be. That is and would be a potential sizable change in the amount of real estate transfer tax collected by the village, and hence why we're not making a recommendation. Though we did include in the packet as well a staff estimate on the necessary real estate transfer tax increase necessary to offset those revenue increases, which would be an increase from the current $8 per $1,000 of value up to $9.85 per $1,000 of value in order to make that change revenue neutral. The final sort of series of recommendations all relate to supply expansion. So going back to some of the things that were brought up by the realtors in their public comment a little bit ago, a lot of the conversation that this board table has had previously, and sort of is a hodgepodge of different things, all again designed to add up to think about ways that we could be increasing the supply of housing here in town generally, as well as specific benefits related to that. So one is one specifically around the opportunistic acquisition of residential properties here in town, either through the land bank, enhanced use as the state abandonment authority, as Manager Jackson indicated earlier. Staff is actually underway right now with a reevaluation of our current vacant buildings ordinance and the process we follow up in relation to that. And if there are in fact buildings that are abandoned here in town per the state statute, which includes factors around code conditions, real estate transfer taxes paid, or real estate taxes paid, and water billing, and being past due on that, that could be another source of us to be able to acquire more lower cost pieces of land that then in turn could be used to be able to increase supply, and is something that could be done in partnership with what's included later on in the memo, which is sort of some thoughts that are specifically related to shared equity opportunities here in Oak Park. The second is thinking about ways to leverage zoning to add additional density, knowing the staff will be coming forward with recommendations specifically related to the Shape of Park recommendations, coming forward as well with a parallel program, which we've talked about a few times, to specifically talk about adding a subsidy or additional amount to incentivize folks to be able to not build those units, but to build them with an affordable component here in town in order to ensure that that is a component that's being added here as well. Recommendations as well, we're working right now, as we've talked about, on potential changes to the inclusionary housing ordinance as well, designed to match up with recommendations coming out of Shape Oak Park. And as part of that, looking as well around and making the recommendation that that any potential changes also include the opportunity that developers could turn over to the village properties that would sort of meet their requirement under that ordinance in any potential changes in the future. Finally, we do make sort of thoughts, share some thoughts specifically related to the shared equity model, the sort of like typical model that folks think about, which is like purchase a property, rehab it or fix it up, and then sell a component of it while maintaining that sort of shared equity piece. When we looked at the amount that was necessary on a per unit basis for single family home ownership was really challenging. We were talking about $150,000 to $250,000 on a per unit basis. And so there was very much a concern that without a substantial financial commitment on the part of the village over a very long period of time to build up that supply of a shared equity stock, that it would be challenging to pull off and may result in sort of a perception, and this is something shared at the HPAC meetings we had on this in September and October, the idea that it could be sort of a lottery winner scenario, right? You're providing a big amount to one person who got this great, more affordable home ownership option, while many people did not benefit as a result of that. And that sort of like opportunity cost question was, I think, sort of a challenging piece to really think about here. So instead, hence our recommendations around increasing supply, and instead thinking about shared equity as an opportunity, either through a potentially re-envisioned OPEDC in the future and or other partnership opportunities that may arise, right? Folks in Austin are working right now thinking about is creating sort of a land trust for themselves. So there may be partners in our region who are standing up land trusts where we could partner with them, that then they could be a holding place for properties that we acquire through some of the means that I discussed before, whether that be through the changes to the IHO or through stuff that comes in through the land bank or through other means that we're bringing in properties and then seeking development in those cases. One of the things we did think a little bit about is whether or not shared equity was a model that was compatible with condominiums, specifically the idea that if you own one particular condominium in a condo development, and we were advised by SEPA, the folks up in Highland Park, that while it can be done, it is challenging. It is better to sort of purpose-built, like some of their largest and most successful examples of that are things that they purpose-built to be a condominium, where they then have control over the whole of the condominium structure, and then there are affordable ownership opportunities that are coming out of that. Hence, sort of the focus instead on the supply piece, and like if we're going to leverage shared equity, that would be better done in partnership with that rather than purchasing the one-off home and doing something. With that sort of walks through all the recommendations that were included. It was a lot. I'm sure folks have questions, but in sum, our recommendations really are around, again, homebuyer education and counseling, the value of the mortgage credit certificate program through Illinois Assist, and then a down payment assistance program along with adjoining changes to the Housing Trust Fund Ordinance, which currently allows you to max up to 80% of AMI, but to increase that for ownership projects up to 120% of AMI in order to be able to more fully capture where the need is in our community. Questions?
Okay, well, thank you. That was a lot of information. And I appreciate it because I know a lot of work went into it. And I, big picture, appreciate the approach, being multifaceted. No one silver bullet, no one program is going to get us to our goals. So I get a little overwhelmed, but I appreciate that that is necessary for us to stay on track. I have a couple of questions, like kind of all over the presentation and memo. Big picture, though, I would appreciate hearing a little bit about how you're approaching like your timeline and prioritization of these different pieces. Obviously, Shape Oak Park is well in motion, and so that is dictating a little bit of the timeline of everything else too, I imagine. But you know, I've been getting kind of annoying about my interest in the IHO revisions, and so where that fits into prioritizing some of the assistance programs with the zoning, with the IHO. How is big picture, like how are you envisioning and your team envisioning it all fit together within this short-term 12-month?
Yeah. So things like the homebuyer education and counseling, we think are relatively need to go through an RFP process or bring on a partner in order to be able to do that sort of related work. The other piece that's very much part and parcel of that is the Illinois Assist program, which I indicated really just requires a board action locally in order to be able to provide the volume cap and to the organization to then be able to undertake that. So those are relatively easier or faster things to be able to do. Setting up the down payment assistance program will take longer because, again, we have proposed to sort of send that out, see if we could find a partner who would be able to help us administer that externally rather than funding that solely internally. And so that would take time as well. But then at the same time, knowing the recommendations that are coming forward for Shape Oak Park, really our intention is to bring the sort of like related pieces, the pieces that plug into that around the supply assistance program and or the inclusionary housing ordinance forward once we have a much truer sense of what specific density increases are envisioned where around town, because the IHO very much feeds into that, right? If we know this is the density that's possible on this parcel, it's hard to calculate the impacts of the IHO in that spot until we have that information related to that. And similarly, right, if we know that these are the types of units that are being incentivized through the program, and we have some idea around the costs related to construction and how much that means, that gives us a better sense about what it is that we can talk about in terms of a per unit subsidy or other similar thing for a supply assistance program. So we envision bringing both of those to the board in the next 12 months, but you know, it's also related very much to the timing for Shape Oak Park, and you know, staff are very much anticipating bringing that forward to at least an additional conversation to the board again in March with more that's coming up.
Yeah, or April. Because some of these programs are proposed to be funded by the trust fund, and so we need to get the trust fund, you know, sustainable for these really important initiatives, which I largely support. In terms of the specific recommendations, I don't know what that was. The only like specific comment I would say about the mortgage credit certificates, this is my exposure to it. So like, I'm not gonna, you know, come down with any like deep analysis, but just curious because it was one of the recommendations that, it wasn't recommended in the strategic vision. So that was kind of why I was trying to get a better handle on it, because it was newer, it was newer to my understanding of the big puzzle that we're putting together here.
Yeah, I will say it's a tool that's not as widely used in Illinois. I think several years ago, especially prior to COVID, it was much more heavily used here in the state. There was actually competing programs, one that was done downstate as well as a separate one that was done by the Illinois Housing Development Authority. They largely walked away from doing that sort of program during COVID while they were focused on other programs instead. And so it just leaves the current one that's operated by the state as well as a separate one that's operated by the city of Chicago, where they make separate use of their private activity bond cap in order to fund that program. So again, it's one of those, like, it's a resource we are not otherwise currently using. It seems to come at low risk to the village to do so. And so it will be nice if it creates those units, but it's not something that we should build an entire program and structure around.
Okay, that's a good way of framing it for me. I appreciate that. Related to the opportunistic acquisition, certainly open and interested in the potential there. I'm wondering if we should draft a policy to govern how those decisions are made, so that aligns with our goals before we kind of commit to it as part of our. Right. Did I just read somebody's mind over here?
Yes, I'm nodding. Yes,
okay.
we should.
Well, it happens to me a lot where somebody else is saying exactly what I'm thinking, so it's good. I would also, I'm just sort of like reading my notes, sorry if I'm jumping all over the place, but the sort of two-prong assessment, makes perfect sense. Both affordability and equity are, pillars of our larger goals and vision for this community. The equity assessment, though, I didn't get a clear sense of like, are we using an existing tool? Are we just going straight on like increased units and homes in terms of ownership?
Yeah.
Is there something more?
Yeah, so this is specifically, we tried to use U.S. Census data to get a sense of the magnitude of the increase that would be needed locally in order to be able to document the sort of change that we're talking about, and then align that with the sort of metrics that we'd be looking for actually out of the specific beneficiary information that we would gather through the process of running these projects and programs, to then be able to turn and say, like, were we able to help this number of households that we anticipated across these different categories, and why or why not, so that then we could go about and evaluate whether or not we were being successful given our goals.
Is there a framework or a tool that you're looking at for the programs, for the education pieces as well?
Yeah, so in this particular case, we think a lot of like the broad existing work that there's a large body of work that currently exists around homebuyer education that we think is largely beneficial and useful. The thing that we think is necessary to supplement it is intentionally with whatever contractor we're working with to include a component specifically about the marketing piece, which is like making sure people are aware of Oak Park as an ownership opportunity, a crossover, and without that sort of intentional affirmative marking of Oak Park as a community for a variety of different groups, we won't necessarily get, right, it's a pipeline problem. We'll continue to get the folks who already self-select and are aware of ownership opportunities here in Oak Park without that sort of additional piece.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
I was gonna let you guys go. You know I can talk. Yeah, I think this is great. So I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into it. I do have a couple of questions that I've identified here, if I can just find them. So one of the things, while I'm looking for most of my notes, when I looked at the AMI chart, which I appreciate you including because that's really helpful. The top number for AMI at 120%, regardless of household size, was $365,000 in terms of home ownership, like a purchase. When I go to one of the leading real estate sites and look in Oak Park, there are 18 homes that are at or below that number, regardless of bedroom size or bedroom number or bathroom number. I don't see how that level of supply will allow us to turn this program into make it meaningful. So I think, I feel like this is a challenge, and as you know, I'm hugely supportive of this, right? And I've been pushing this since I lost my first election in 2019. Which I actually lost in part because there's a lot of people here who seem to think that pushing black home ownership is not progressive. Who knew? Yet, 18 homes below $365,000, not a whole lot of lubrication in the market to make this program actually successful, I think. So I think the first issue that we had, the bigger issue that we have, right, is supply. And then even amongst those 18, a number of them are condos, and condos are great, except here in Oak Park sometimes, because the homeownership dues often exceed the monthly property tax burden. So you end up in a situation where the condo looks affordable until you think about the monthly payment, right? The purchase price is affordable. And so I think if condos are going to make up a meaningful portion of this program, we have to figure out some way to address that, right? There's one that I was just looking at here, and hold on, because this one was really significant. I was like, whoa, kind of caught me by surprise. Yeah, so one of these homeowner dues was over $500. Property tax is $337 a month, right? So that's, when you look at the all-in on that, it's $2,000 a month, which is probably affordable, I guess, but
Relative to everything else.
right, relative to everything else, right? But then, the problem is that you have both of these fees, property taxes and then homeowner dues that are, they're flexible, right? They're not static. So they're typically going to go up in time, especially when you're dealing with properties that are as old as the ones that exist here in the village, right? Those special assessments come through, right? So your homeownership dues of $500 a month go up to $8,000, $9,000, $1,000 a month, right? And folks who are on a relatively fixed budget, right, when that happens, in addition to the way that our property taxes skate all over the place, right? Like all of a sudden, this looked like it was affordable when you bought it, and 2 years later, it's not, right? And so what I really, really, really want to make sure that we're doing is not locking people into things like that, right? Because I don't want folks to start purchasing an asset that is going to become unaffordable to them while we're marketing it to them as an affordable option, right? So that's probably the biggest kind of thing that I want to make sure that we address, because I do see the opportunity with condos. I just don't know how we mitigate that issue there. Typically, when you buy a house, right, like you got a house, as long as you don't get a variable rate mortgage, right, like your payment is pretty much set, with the exception of property taxes and how they kind of go from year to year. And then repairs, obviously, but repairs exist. That's just when you own something, you got to keep it up. So that's one of the bigger things. I like the section on supply. Really appreciate that. I'm just going to pull it up here again, because I think that was one of the areas that I believe was is the most important. Here it is. So opportunistic supply. I feel like I like the aspects of going after abandoned properties and those that are with the land bank. I think that's really good strategy. What I do worry about is, and I think as long as we keep this narrowly focused, we'll probably be fine. But I do worry that the village entering the property acquisition market creates inflation. Right, whenever government money shows up in the market, it creates inflation. And so I do worry that if we were to enter the larger property market, right, then our funding becomes an inflationary force, which then increases overall home prices for everyone, and I'd rather not do that.
That's actually another factor that we talked about, specifically related to the more traditional shared equity model, where we're out there competing against current buyers in an already tight market to buy distressed single-family homes as an all-cash buyer. It's like, well, what's that going to actually end up doing to housing prices? And does that really get us where we want to go?
Right. We show up all cash, no inspection, close today.
Exactly.
Right. Like, I mean, those terms are hard to beat. I do like the down payment match assistance. I think that's great. I think no, MCC, right? Amazing. Where'd you find that? That's awesome. I never heard of this before.
So we did it after some digging. So we had a conversation with someone from the city of Chicago about sort of the way that they have used private activity bond cap. And we're like, man, that sounds great, but that sounds like a heck of an undertaking. I don't know if we could do that. And then we were trying to find whether or not there were others around the state who did do things like that. Hence, Town of Normal and the sort of consortium that they lead downstate.
Yeah, this is amazing. I love this. We should absolutely do this. It's crazy that this has been out there all this time, and it's been so far under the radar. I mean, it's nuts. That's awesome. It takes a lot to surprise me, right? Like I do my homework. I'm shocked, and that's a positive. So kudos. I think a lot of my comments are going to focus around supply, right? Like I think a lot of the success of this program is going to depend on the outcome of Shape Oak Park, right? And so for me, like these two things go hand in hand. And if Shape Oak Park if the outcome of that, if what we pass here at the board table isn't set up to generate a significant supply influx, then I don't know how much of this matters. So I think when we're talking about Shape when it comes back, that this has to be a component of that conversation, like explicitly, so that we understand what what the pros and the cons are of the decisions that we're making there, right? So if we say, if we're saying that zoning, we're going to do a mild zoning change, then what we're saying is that we're also going to keep home ownership largely inequitable for non-white folks here in Oak Park, right? Not just the existing, but the future. And that has to be explicitly said. I will explicitly say it, I will. But I'm explicitly saying it now because I do see that is one of the larger success factors, right? And whether or not this program works. I'm not super a fan of the shared equity model. I think it's kind of cool, right? But what I worry about with shared equity is acquisition without participation, right? Because the cap on equity is there, and so you end up with a lot of the responsibility of ownership, but a lot of the upside mitigated. And so it's almost like a half-hearted welcome. But, I do like I think it's a unique idea, and I wonder if there is a way to shape the program to make it work a little bit better on the participation side while also, keeping the aspect that keeps the cost down. But, I wonder how successful it would be once buyers start to understand that their equity participation is limited over time.
Yeah, so one of the most critical components when setting up a shared equity program is which of the various funding formulas that you can choose around, like, how much do you get out on the other side, and how much of a credit do you get for any improvements that you've made in the home over that time? How does that relate to, like, the performance of the wider housing market? Because there are absolutely different choices that you can make that have different blends, and some work differently in different housing markets. And so we would need to be intentional about which one we choose in Oak Park and why, and how that then has an impact back on potential purchasers and how much of a potential gain or upside that they're realizing related to that. It is one of the more challenging pieces as part of that.
Yeah, agree. One of the more interesting ones, but definitely one of the more challenging ones as well.
I will say the flip side is, and this is something that we've thought about, is in some ways the investments like that are not so different than investments that the village as a whole, the board, chose to make decades ago in terms of funding organizations like the Residence Corporation purchasing existing apartment projects, where we continue to reap the benefits of that as a community because of decisions that were made 30, 40, 50 years ago to purchase buildings that then in turn are intentionally affordable in those sorts of ways many, many, many years down the line. And that's the ultimate good from a program like that, from like a community-wide standpoint, is like, if you're buying 2 units a year, after 20 years, all of a sudden you've got 40 units, and now it starts to look something more sizable than you gave $250,000 to a person to buy a unit in this particular year. And it's like, how do you balance against those two different things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the applying this program to multifamily renter kind of buildings, it's a lot clearer, like how that benefit works, because the Res Corp is a great example of that, right? When you start thinking about ownership, I think it's very clear how it works to the benefit of the village, less clear how it works to the person actually buying into it. Yeah. And which is the other thing, one of the other things that it brings up. This program has to not only be effective, but it has to be attractive, right? Because we're not the only municipality in Illinois, right? So ultimately, when folks look at a program to own here in Oak Park, they're comparing it not just to other places in Oak Park, but other places in Illinois, right? Like maybe I want to instead go live in Maywood or Broadview, right? Like the housing stock there might be well, it's actually not as old as ours, and it's not as expensive as ours, and neither are the property taxes, right? But there are unique benefits to each of these different municipalities, right? And so when I look at how our home ownership program stacks up, right, I look at it as it's partially assistance, but also partially marketing to the point that you made earlier in terms of we have to be able to attract folks here, that affirmative marketing piece, and in how that program, once you get folks interested in stepping the door, does it actually deliver on what we said it would in this community? Because we know our community delivers, right? But does the programming deliver to convince folks that Oak Park is a great long-term investment for people who might initially be stretching it a little bit to stay here? So I think we'll have to figure out how we craft that messaging to make it work. Because what was great, I don't think it can survive if we're only marketing to people who are already here in Oak Park, right? The transfer tax thing is interesting. I don't know that it. So I'm on two. So I think I'm going to take this in two different ways, right? So I think the transfer tax rebate process, I can definitely see advantages to it. I don't know if I see advantages to it in relation to this program, right? I think there is a huge advantage into getting people out of homes that are no longer fit for their lifestyle, right? Like you're in a 5-bedroom home because you had a lot of kids at home. Kids are now gone, right? And now you're living in a house, you're paying $40,000 a year in property taxes, but you want to stay in Oak Park. What do you do, right? I don't know if $2,000, $3,000 is enough of an incentive for somebody paying $40,000 a year in property taxes, but maybe it is, right? But at the very least, it's a form of goodwill. Say, hey, we would like to keep you in our community, right? And so I can definitely see the benefits of that, and I'd definitely be willing to explore that. I don't know that it makes I don't know if it overall, right? Like it's going to take revenue from the village, which means we got to find it somewhere else. Right, and it's a system, not a silo. So whenever we lose revenue over here, it's got to come over here. Sometimes that's property taxes. That means this is a net wash, sometimes a net negative, because property taxes recur every year. So, I worry that the affordability aspect of transfer tax rebates doesn't exist, but the liquidity aspect does, and the retention aspect does. And so I wonder how that plays out. But so that's a different discussion. But for this program, I'm not sure I'm supportive. What else did I have here? Yeah, I think I'm pretty well. Yeah, I think I'm covered most of what I wanted to cover on this. On the IHO, I think also the IHO discussion also dovetails, like you said earlier, with Shapo Park, right? And when we do bring that discussion back, I'd like to have that with developers in the room, right? Folks who who live in that world and can tell you what it looks like if the IHO is X% versus Y%, right? Is that going to make them more or less likely to build here? Because what I'd like to do, what I'd like to ensure that we do is that we use supply as a North Star, right? And the IHO funds the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and amazing things have come out of that, which was the email that I sent the other day. 86 affordable units have come out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is amazing for the $4 million. But there's a bigger metric here, which I think is so cool. Let me just find it real quick. And because I thought that I was just completely and totally blown away by it, and I can't find where's the email? Oh, here it is. Got it. So there is. We were. It was. Thank you. 10,000. How much? 10,244 months of affordable of affordable rent months, right? Like that's think I did the math, it was 800 years, 847 years of household affordable rent. 847 years of household affordable rent. That's like, it's crazy. And like, this is a huge, huge, huge success. This is not even a little success. And that's in addition to the 86 fixed units of affordable housing and the 524 months of rental assistance that keep people off the street, right? So ensuring that we craft an IHO that allows things to get built so that supply continues to materialize and so that we continue to fund this housing trust fund so that we can continue to do this good work is essential, right? So when we do it, I just want to make sure we take the proper care to ensure that we are that we're setting all the numbers correctly and that we don't create an IHO that looks great on paper that makes building here impossible. And so we lose all the benefit to what we're having now, right? Like the metaphor that I've been using with this is I don't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, right? There's a lot of golden eggs in this email. I don't want to open up the goose just to see if there's more gold in there and figure out now we're screwed. So, but yeah, that's all I got.
I agree with just about everything that's already been said, so I'm not going to repeat that. I'm on board with the home buyer education program that's being proposed. I think that doing down payment assistance makes a lot of sense. The mortgage credit certificates, just so I understand a little better how that ends up working, does it actually result in a lower monthly payment because the mortgage servicer is required to provide that on a monthly basis, or it's a just year-end tax refund?
It's a year-end tax refund, so it changes the effective rate, but not the actual rate that you're paying on a month-to-month basis.
Okay. So this sort of ties in with the education program we're doing because we really have to educate these first-time home buyers that we have taken the steps necessary to make this program available to them, and they can be saving $2,000 a year, but that they have to apply for it.
Yeah, they have to fill out their tax return and fill out the appropriate form and do all the things.
And my guess is, this is one where they're proactively going to have to be telling H&R Block or whomever they use, because that's not a form that their tax advisor typically is filling out, because it's a program that none of us had ever heard of before.
Or that it comes up right away if you're doing it yourself on TurboTax, or things like that.
So I'm hugely supportive of this. I think it's important to note how it ties into our education efforts, and is the thought that we would be doing this in joining an existing consortium, or okay? So I mean, I don't know whether there's also a way for us to provide leadership in talking to other local municipalities who maybe also didn't know about this program. It's a great program. It seems like we should all be doing it.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I want to share the good gospel of the mortgage credit certificates locally, because I imagine the administrative costs of running such a program, the education costs, and the hurdles related to tax preparers all will go down if there's more uptake of the program regionally, because then all of your local tax preparers are going to be, seeing an opportunity to save a bunch of their clients an extra $2,000, and that just makes them look good. So if we get more regional uptake, it lowers some of the hurdles to participation, and so I would be in favor of that. I'm comfortable with where we're ending up on right now on the real estate transfer tax. I do think if we take up further discussion on it, I like the idea of applying refunds to buyers as opposed to sellers, because I think that both there's a little bit more immediacy in the refund there because it's happening at the time of purchase, and I like how that impacts folks who are moving within the community from rental to purchase, and I think that I'd be comfortable with, if we were to take up a refund program, a lower cap even than the 300. So it's really just impacting the most affordable of properties, and it's really incentivizing incentivizing people who are moving within Oak Park who are either buying for the first time or looking to downsize is where I imagine we would see the most incentive with such a program. And I think that the one thing that such a refund program I see great value in is not having people sort of feeling locked into a property that is no longer a good fit for their personal needs. You know, someone who is now an empty nester, has, you know, a 4-bedroom home, but only 2 people living there. I can see how the transfer tax may contribute to a feeling of being locked in. So some refund there I can see some attractiveness to, but I do think I would want to keep the caps low and have it be focused on buy side rather than sell side refunds. All of the success of this is going to be tied to expanding supply. You know, all of these proposals are nibbling around the edges of affordability. It's lowering thresholds. You know, the down payment, that's one of the biggest threshold problems. It's only by expanding supply that we can actually create new affordable housing. And as both my colleagues said, in support of opportunistic acquisition, so long as we come up with a very clear set of parameters for what types of properties we would be targeting for acquisition and what our goals for the development of those properties would be. Because I do not want to be in a position where we are coming in and competing with, you know, sort of normal retail buyers. I want it to be, you know, it's truly a distressed or abandoned property, and we are injecting liquidity in the market and creating more supply by identifying opportunities for increasing housing supply. And I don't think a shared equity model necessarily, it was a very interesting conversation we had. It doesn't necessarily seem like a good fit for our community at this time. Thank Thank you.
Few comments, just trying to summarize. I largely agree with my colleagues. I won't repeat. I will say, question on the housing buyer education program that we're talking about. It's $125,000 a year, correct? And then it was talking about staff capacity. Is that the one where we're talking about capacity?
We were talking about that, I think, more for the down payment assistance.
Down payment assistance, okay. But the 125 is reserved this year in the budget, correct? So what do future years look like?
It's always a question for the board to consider through its annual budgetary
I'd like
process.
to know before we engage in it, right? So what are your thoughts? I mean, what are the thoughts?
Well, right, what we're putting forward today is very much something around like the value of sustained and doing that over a period of time in order to cultivate those buyers, right? Someone who comes in even today may not be ready today and they may not be ready tomorrow, but they might be ready in 13 months from now. And, you know, part of this is being able to have that, building that pipeline of folks who are ready to buy and are educated about that. And to some of the comments that I feel like I've heard from others tonight, make sure that there's also support for someone on the other side of that transaction once they're in the home and they're dealing with uncertain condominium assessments that they suddenly got hit with, or they're trying to file for their mortgage credit certificate in order to be able to receive that on their tax return, that they're getting those sorts of additional supports as they continue to remain in the home too.
How do we pay for that though? I mean, what's your ideas right now?
Well, I think this, obviously, this is we're in the proposal stage, and I think and maybe, Jonathan, you can amplify this, but we've had prior commitments with the Regional Housing Center where we reserved that funding in the budget, and I think this is a portion of that funding.
Correct.
That we're starting with. And so we understood when we were dealing with the Regional Housing Center that what we were trying to do is refocus those dollars in a more responsive, effective, and efficient manner. And you know, I might as well say it now, like even at that time, we thought that if we could even get the housing center to perform according to the village board's expectations, that they could be a future partner in something like this. And if not, we still are committed to advancing and supporting affordable home ownership, and this is a key activity to do it. And so we think it's a bona fide investment that we should be considering. So even if it's not going to back to the housing center, we would invest it either directly or in another nonprofit organization to provide this service, because the service is pretty much I think a traditional service for supporting, along with the other suite of services that Jonathan's described, and maybe even some others in the future, but the ones we're talking about tonight, I mean, I think this is an essential component to it, the home buyer education and counseling and the support. So we're starting with those resources. Might as well say it too. I mean, we have continued to have conversations with the housing center. Obviously those conversations haven't led to a point where we're ready to bring that conversation back to the village board. But I think from Jonathan and our perspective is that we cannot wait to deliver on the board's goals to advance affordability. And so we parked those resources just temporarily until we got to a point where we made it ready to make a specific recommendation, and we're here now. And so whether it's the housing center or some other organization or staff directly doing it, we feel like it's a bona fide service to invest in. So that's the source that we're starting with.
Right. So I'm just thinking, like, we talk about transfers from the general fund generally and moving some of these expenditures. And there's been a lot of talk. We have a list now I'm running with transfers from the general fund. And that conversation, what I'm just going to suggest now is as we get into these discussions like this one and like the chamber and we're doing the living room project, maybe sustainability, other things that we really need Kevin Boyso's input on the capacity of the existing revenue streams that we're getting and how those are going to fit into what the fund is able to do. Because in the future, we may not always have a big balance, right? We're going to go into a period now where I'm guessing we're going to probably expend some of that and potentially toward the capital expenditures, potentially. I don't know yet how that structure is going to look. But we're not always going to have a big balance. It's just not, it's a fact. And as we move forward, we have to be careful we don't end up just funding continually things. But I think that your point is well taken on the housing center and what it was. I think we used to put in 300,000 a year. I think it was.
Yes.
So okay. Yeah. So I'm interested again about the mortgage credit thing. So we were pretty interesting discussion. So it's a tax credit on the. So you have to have the ability to use the tax credit too. Is that also true? Like, not only do you have to earn it, you have to be able to apply it and use it probably the year you earn it, I would assume, or something like that. So it's a credit. I think it's a tax credit.
Is it a credit or a refund?
It's a
It's a
credit.
Well, it's a credit. Could lead to a refund, I guess. But it's a credit off your tax due.
Your liability.
Your liability, right. So, but if you don't, what is it, if you don't owe any tax, you can't get money back that you don't, can't just pull it out of thin air. So, I mean, you have to be able to pay tax to use the tax, so credit. Correct. Revenue to support it. So, just a question for our legal counsel tonight. Any of these ideas that we're talking about, any concerns? I just want to make sure that we've covered all the bases on a legal standpoint from all the different programs and ideas that are being presented here tonight, that you see no ability or concern that somebody would come in and say, oh, this isn't legal, this isn't right. I want to make sure that we've covered that as we move ahead. I just want to say that because things are changing in the world, and I want to know that we're covered.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to provide a answer on that this evening. I could advise the board there was a mention of a potential increase to a real estate transfer tax, to offset, let's say, if you were to do a credit. I can advise the board that under state law, a referendum is required if you are going to increase the amount of a transfer tax. But with respect to an opinion with regard to legality of the various options that have been outlined, that would require a detailed legal analysis.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point about the transfer tax, because I think that one has, relative to the other recommendations, these programs here, I know, in the city of Champaign, I administered all these programs, right? These are traditional programming where we have gaps here in the Village of Oak Park, and if we're really serious about affordable housing, down payment assistance, the housing counseling. So these are mortgage credit certificate program. Right. These are not, these are things that are already been tested. Okay. It's just about how we scale them here in Oak Park to be effective here in Oak Park if we want to do them. So I don't think there are any legal questions really about the programs.
Just throwing it out because I don't know, these are new to me too. And I mean, some of these I've heard of these generally, but we've never approached these in Oak Park like that. So.
Yeah, and I know there's we'll probably be talking a little bit more about programs to incentivize increasing supply. That's listed here. And so I think we do need to provide some detailed information about what options are available to us that would be supported by legal analysis on that as well. So.
Okay. I did like the idea of the transfer tax by the Realtors Association here. It did make sense to me. I think I could support that. I don't think it's, it sounded like it also built a lot of good in terms of people living in the community and wanting to stay in the community. I think that's an important thing. You hear more and more about people coming to Oak Park to educate their children, and then they're gone. And we used to hear about that, but now we see it. I mean, I do see people coming and going. It used to be they'd talk about that and they would stay. Now they come and they use our schools and then they leave. So I do like the idea if it does, and I think it would help keep people in the community and make them feel more listened to too, I think, to some degree. And finally, the IZO, and it's the inclusionary zoning ordinance. I just wanted to say that, as has been mentioned, but I don't think it was specifically mentioned, maybe it was, the economic vitality group really needs to, I really need an analysis on that from somebody. I mean, and I think John would be certainly capable of doing that, and I want to hear That's an important thing, and we always say 0% of whatever is zero. 0% of zero is zero, or 25% of zero is zero. We have to make sure that we get some measure of contribution, and we got to listen to those guys because they know the market and they know what triggers the market. So I think that's an important thing, and I do think we need to have the discussion, and I'm certainly all for it. It's been a number of years. I think we did that in 2018, I think, or thereabouts. And so it was a long time ago. So that's all I have, generally. Thank you.
Yeah, and just Trustee Taglia, I mean, all good points, and I think, you know, we're working holistically as a team. So when we come back with on Shape Oak Park, the affordable housing programs, we do expect, you know, John and his team are making a contribution to all of it, and particularly when we get into like the ISO conversation and how do we, you know, make sure that we're not disincentivizing supply.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what makes the conversation tough, right? Because, you know, we're trying to preserve affordability or advance affordability, affordable housing, but at the same time, we need supply. And so how do we, right? So it will be, it's a holistic team that's working together on all these initiatives. And so you can expect to have the economic vitality team weigh in on this stuff. And then to your point about just making sure we maintain a global view on the finances, I think that, you know, what we stood up last fall with the Finance Committee, we expect to get those Finance Committee meetings going probably sometime in April. So we're going to get an early start to the budget process. You know, Kevin and I were talking today about, you know, working on the calendar. And so a lot of these topics will now start to stream through the Finance Committee in order to evaluate it in the context of our overall finances. But just rest assured that like all of these things that we're contemplating are things that, you know, obviously are directed by previous board policy. Like tonight, it's the strategic vision for housing. So there was an expectation that we're going to be actually trying to look at these investments and still try to maintain our commitments to fiscal responsibility. So I think those are all good points. And yeah.
Well, thank you, and that's all I have to say. Appreciate that context.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And then you'll close it out. I'll close this out, right? Yeah. Thank you. I'll be quick. So just, to be clear about direction, short-term recommendations, I agree. I also, you know, the benefit of being one of the last is I appreciate all the conversation that sort of we built on each other, and I think this has been a great conversation and sort of help me come to some conclusions here. So I appreciate all of that. Short-term recommendations, home buyer education makes sense. The Illinois Assist program, good job finding that. It seems like it's almost like a municipal cheat code or something. It's like, whoa, here it is. It's like, nobody knew this was here, right? To that particular program, you'd mentioned, Jonathan, that it was not something that we should sort of build around long term. But then I also heard some discussion around, well, there's value in this being around for a long time and there becomes familiarity, especially if it's spread regionally. But then you also mentioned some history about how there was more of it during, you know, and then it all fell apart during COVID. So can you just expand a little bit more about that? I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, okay, well, why not do it for a long time if it's a thing that could potentially have longer term benefits?
Yeah, I think, if for any reason if the village in the future wanted to use this private activity bond cap for other activities, there is very much an opportunity cost there, right? Okay. You can't donate it away to Illinois Assist if you're like, we're going to use it for this project or something like that we would envision in the future. So there is very much a trade-off, and the village would need to be thoughtful about that in the future. The second piece is just the variability that we saw with towns, like actual experiences with towns over the last 5 years in terms of like some years it was none, and some years it was 25, 30 units a year. And so the idea that like you're going to get a set amount year in and year out it seemed less certain.
Less consistent. It's just
exactly. And so, like, is it beneficial if we not are using those private activity bond cap in another way to be able to contribute it in order to be able to try and unlock additional homeownership opportunities in town? Absolutely. But we may not find in all market circumstances that it continues to be a durable solution in the same sort of way that like homebuyer education is the sort of thing that I would describe as a perennial, evergreen, always useful thing as long as we're continuing to try and attract and cultivate folks who are trying to be prepared for homeownership or to be able to stay in their home over the long term, which, you know, even if we're adding supply or doing other things, continues to be a benefit to the community.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm curious to see, you know, I'm supportive of it. Let's try it out. Let's see how it goes. And maybe we'll learn some things. Maybe there's ways we can identify down the road to add some more stability to it. I don't know, by moving things around. I don't know. Maybe we can think of something. But if that's the only real downside, then, I mean, and plus the opportunity cost, which I guess to that point, have we it sounds like we just found out about it. We've never used that before for anything else.
No, I ran this by the finance team before I
Okay.
came here just
Cool.
to make sure, and they're like, not aware that we've used it.
Okay. So until someone else has an idea to use this for something else.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing lost.
Yeah, there's nothing lost. And Jonathan, I think hit it, you know, like you could use it for specific projects.
Sure.
You could seed it to, I know I've had experience where you seed it to an economic development authority to channel it to a specific project that needs gap finance. I mean, there are a number of things you could do with it.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is the primary, I think, use of it, even statewide, I think, when it's used.
Okay, it's how other municipalities are making use of it. I see. Okay, great. Good to know. Yeah, again, just going down the list, the revise the Housing Trust Fund ordinance to support 120 AMI makes sense. And yeah, to everyone's points about Shape Oak Park is just going to be like so critical to anything we do. So that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to learn more about, you know, I think there's a fascinating trade-off between, you know, for the medium-term recommendation around strategic acquisition, there is a trade-off here. So I agree with my colleagues that, yeah, we definitely want to be absolutely, like, clear about what kinds of properties we're going for, and really only the distressed and abandoned ones and ones that, you know, really no one else wants, so that we don't crowd that out. Yeah, and I think I'm open to the payment assistance as well. For the real estate transfer tax, it's interesting to know, I didn't know it would require a voter referendum, so I'm glad that was surfaced, because that's a high threshold for change. Question about, just from is it possible, thinking about this from like an equity perspective, it's $8,000 per 1,000 square foot of value. Is there any flexibility with making that sort of more of a skewed scale? So it's like $2 for the cheaper properties and like $20 for the most expensive properties. Is there a way to make the most expensive homes pay more and the least expensive homes pay less proportionally? Is that allowed? And I guess would I also have to go to a referendum if anything like that changed?
I might defer to Greg here. My understanding is that we're not allowed to do a graduated real estate transfer tax at the local level.
I know that any increase above $8 per thousand of value would require voter approval. In terms of whether or not a graduated real estate transfer tax is possible, that would require some research to confirm.
So if my colleagues are not interested, that's fine. But I'm just curious what's possible here from an equity perspective.
Yeah, as I recall, City of Chicago was looking at that a few years ago as a way to fund some additional housing activities as well, but has not implemented it, I believe, because it requires state action to do so.
Okay, sure.
But
okay. I remember something around like a tax on homes over a certain dollar amount, right? And so maybe that's similar mechanism here. Okay, cool. Well, just curious to learn more about that. And yeah, I think I'm open to some kind of refund program. So I'm curious to learn more about that as things come up. So I think that's everything for me. Yeah.
All right. Yep. Go on.
That was the Bring Chicago Home initiative, which was it failed on a ballot referendum, but it was a proposal for a graduated real estate transfer tax. I wouldn't be opposed to further studying that issue as a way, you know, similar to I was talking about a refund where it's capped so that, you know, the first like $200,000 in value on the purchase, the real estate transfer tax would be refunded on that amount. That's in effect a graduated, but it could be further graduated by having a higher level of transfer tax at the most expensive property values. So I wouldn't be. I would be open to further conversation on that topic.
Thank you all. President Scaman wanted to let everyone know she is hugely supportive of the transfer tax discussion. As am I. I think, you know, definitely giving us and homeowners more options. I think it really goes to what our village board goals are when it comes to affordability and trying to create more diverse options for folks to not just live here, but to also age here and have some other opportunities. So largely supportive in figuring out how to, you know, especially the parents who did move here for their kids that want to stay here after the fact, figure out how do we continue to keep them here. And I think every little bit helps, regardless of, you know, the dollar amount. It's still going to mean something because some people, like my parents, are not going to leave. So they'll take any opportunities to figure out, you know, whether it's obviously take advantage of your senior tax freeze and all those other opportunities too. But I think adding some new opportunities to the mix is great. I love the credit that we found as well, which is available. I think that's an awesome opportunity as a first-time homeowner. Figuring out those type of things are huge. I know before, like you said, we relied on agencies like Regional Housing Center. Now I think we're figuring out how to do this in-house and continuing to become innovative, but also become critical of some of the processes and make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure or residents. I think we all want to become homeowners or owners at some point. If it's a traditional house or a condo, it's figuring out, you know, what's going to sustain our needs here in Oak Park, and we remain a highly desirable community and want to continue to be that highly desirable community, but figuring out opportunities for, you know, purchasing homes, whether they are, you know, ones that have been a little neglected and, you know, not given the care that it needs, and getting it built up and put back into the housing stock and made affordable again for other hopeful first-time homeowners. So I do appreciate the conversation. I think it's huge for us. I think we heard Trustee Jacob Levinson talking about Levin Jacobson. Sorry, I always do this. We heard her talking about increasing that fund, and we also heard Trustee Wesley talking about, you know, not asking for too much to, you know, ruin that relationship that we have with developers. And I think it is a fine line, but it is one that you never want to hear after the fact, like, hey, you know, I actually would have given you, you know, 5% more, you know. But it's figuring out what that is. If you don't have those hard conversations, you'll never know. And we just don't want to feel like we left something on the table with our developers, and we find out what that sweet spot is, so that we can really give the most to, you know, these people who are needing to find homes, and sometimes it isn't directly in the building that's being built, but it's finding these other opportunities and buying more units within Oak Park that I think have done a fantastic job, like Trustee Wesley said, of providing homes, providing new opportunities for those within our community and those outside looking and wanting to come here. So continuing to grow that fund is going to be huge. And when we do talk to, like Jenna has been talking to so many residents, that's one thing that consistently gets brought up. Are we leaving stuff on the table? How do we get better at this? Because I think we're a very polite community. So we're like, you know, we're a little hesitant in asking for anything more. So just seeing what that is, and we know that you all, where is he at? I think he's already gone. Our economic vitality director or manager is doing, his best to continue to build those relationships and find out how do we get the most out of each of those. Thank you so much for answering all the questions today. It didn't eat up too much time. I think we got 2 more things to go. But thank you so much. I hope we've given you enough direction to come back with us.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. That's right at the end. All right. We don't need a vote on that. So the next item is item F. It's a motion by Trustee Wesley, seconded by Village President Scaman to authorize an amendment to Ordinance 22-51, granting special use permit of the Oak Park River Forest High School Southfield lights to extend the lighting duration. Can I get a motion? Or wait, we do have a motion, so, right? Or do we need to?
So the item F, which President Pro Tem just announced, is simply the discussion item before the board. Item G, the next item, is an ordinance that would approve the proposal that was proposed in item F.
Okay. All right.
So if you'd like to move item G at this time.
Oh, do it together?
Yeah. Is there a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Second, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good enough? All right, good enough. Go ahead.
I don't know if you like this.
Yeah, I'll go. Okay, so I got contacted by some folks over at OPRF about extending the permit for the lights on the baseball field, on the Lake Street field, in the fall from, I believe it's 8 to 10 o'clock p.m. From September, October, November-ish through the beginning of December, which will, August, thank you, Jenna, which would allow more groups to utilize the field during that time, right? And specifically will allow some of the younger kids to be able to utilize the field so that they can get their practice in and so on and so forth, and just be a more economical use of shared resources. And so, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Just a movement, a motion to extend the line duration for like 2 hours.
From 8 to 10? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fully in support. I would have seconded your motion if Vicky hadn't seconded it first.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like a no-brainer. I don't see the downsides.
Yeah.
So, yes.
This might not be the brightest question. Definitely support. Is the field is owned by D200 and the village owns the lights? Is that the dynamic here?
The village has approved a special use permit.
It's just the permit. It's just to use the lights.
Yeah, we don't own
I
it.
see. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Letting them use their own lights.
Yeah, use your lights and enjoy the field, please. Thank you.
Gotta love government.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, same thing, love the field, played on it, think it's great to be able to have those moments with the community. It's not just utilized just for sports. There's other activities that get to utilize it, and it's not just the high school. It's been other organizations that have used the field as well. So I love that the use is out there and mixed throughout our community. We've also had the partnership with the Park District over that time period as well in between. So I think that this shows great use over time of that field. I know, the maybe only downside is obviously, you're never going to make everyone happy. I promise you that. We have had the neighbors. That's something when I was playing football, that was the thing too, but I think the relationship has grown over the past just to make sure that the sound bleed and the noise bleed is as contained as it can possibly be. I mean, the lighting that sometimes gets into the next door, the neighbors, and that's where I would see, some of that objection from. But overall, as a community, I mean, we've had really great events that have gone without, knock on wood, any setbacks or any issues. So I'm largely supportive. I think it's just a positive thing for our community coming together for different activities, and being able to utilize those lights is a huge safety thing as well. So keeping things well lit when there might be practices, or making sure that there is ample time to see the field and get off of the field before things shut down. I'm sure they'll shut down before 10, but giving people time to see getting back to their cars and being safe is a huge aspect of that as well. So I'm largely supportive. I don't know if anyone has any comments to add on top of this.
The only thing I'll add is that I have not seen any comments opposing this, either email or I don't know, phone or social media or anything. So.
Okay.
And we know Corey knows about social, so. No, then do we want to just go and take this to a vote now?
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
All right. Clerk Waters.
Trustee Eater.
Yes.
Trustee Wesley.
Yes.
Trustee Levin Jacobson.
Yes.
Trustee Straw.
Yes.
Trustee Taglia. Yes. And President Pro Tem Enya.
Yes. All right, I think that takes us to call to the board. We'll start with you.
This has been a great meeting, President Pro Tem Enya. Just want to remind everyone that early voting does happen next week. It starts Monday, March 2nd, and runs through March 16th. You can get a sample ballot from the Cook County Clerk's office if you go online and click on your information on the elections landing page. If you have any questions about mail ballots, about polling places, you are welcome to contact us here at the Oak Park Clerk's office, 708-358-5672, or we can also receive text messages at 708-548-2242. Thanks.
While we've been having an informative meeting where we've been advancing actual public policy that helps residents of Oak Park, there has been a ongoing 2-hour propaganda speech that's filled with lies and hate, where our president announced that he had ended diversity, equity, and inclusion in our country, where he talked about 2.4 million people no longer on food stamps, not neglecting to mention the fact that that's because our federal government has simply cut food stamps. These people don't now have access to food without food stamps. They just don't have access to food. The speech has targeted sanctuary cities as places that are dealing with incredibly high crime and fraud and waste. And so, this is just another reminder that we're here doing the work. We're here actually doing the things that make municipal government run. We're talking about homeownership. We've in recent weeks talked about our municipal waste stream. We've talked about the fundamentals of government, and we are doing this in spite of a national government that wants to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, wants to divide, wants to distract, and wants us to be unable to move forward with policies that help people. So we're going to continue doing the good work, but it's important to recognize what we're up against in this moment.
I was really grateful that we started this meeting with the update and report about the structure fire on Taylor and North Avenue. This time last week at our meeting, I was getting text messages from neighbors, and it really connects the, life-saving bravery of our fire department. I'm very grateful for all of their sacrifice and the real-life sort of terror that a structure fire like that causes in our community. So we're really lucky that nobody was harmed and that we have such a wonderful fire department, and that we can count on neighboring communities to step up when we are in need, and we do the same, and I just want to reflect on that.
No comment, thank you.
Real quick, so back in 2021, I wrote an article about community engagement, and one of the things I cited was there's a paper called Racial Disparities in Housing Politics, Evidence from Administrative Data. And it reviewed public comment participation and from a race-based lens, and determined that overwhelmingly most of the folks there are white. I can, from my own experience here in this room for the last nearly 4 years, I can tell you the same thing as in Oak Park. One of the quotes, and I won't belabor this because I don't want us to have to vote to go past 10. The quote I want to tease out here is I think the study does a good job of calling, this is what was in one of the articles I cited, I think the study does a good job of calling out the fact that the way the system operates when left to its own devices has a significant bias in favor of homeowners, the middle class, whites, and immediately adjacent property owners. Look, that's just the way the system operates, right? And why is this relevant? Because we've been talking about home ownership tonight. So when we're talking about home ownership, and we're specifically talking about Black and minority home ownership, we're talking about the people who participate in our democracy, right? We're talking about the people who can afford to live here so that they can participate in our democracy. Why is that important? Because if you don't participate in our democracy, then you're not seen by our democracy. You're not seen in our community, right? The community reflects those who participate. The community reflects those who live here, right? And so when we start to think about, why home ownership is important, is because the people who live here are important, right? And the representation of those people is important. And the breakdown, the diversity of those people is important, right? And so you will never get the level of inclusion that we aspire to if we're not actually creating systems that encourage the existence of the people that we say we want here to actually exist here. And I'll leave the rest of it for one view.
I think I might have had that person who wrote that article at Chai Hacknight present.
Oh, really?
Either that or something very similar. So yeah, I appreciate those kinds of studies, right? And while I'm talking about Chai Hacknight, they're having an election tonight for new board members. I'm not up for this cycle, but congratulations to Chai Hacknight for continuing their own little mini democracy tonight in my absence. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
If you want to say, you're more than one.
President Scaman, we hope you feel better soon. And President Pro Tem Enya, you've done a great job.
Just wanted to, hold on before I forget. I know we were just talking about DEI, so I want to make sure we shout out the work that we're doing here in Oak Park. So I wanted to thank the village. They are going to be having the Black History Month celebration this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the 19th Century Women's Club. So just wanted to make sure that we remember that. This marks 100 years of Black History Month recognition, and the DEIO has developed the program to reflect this historic milestone. So wanted to make sure that we shout that out. The village does a great job of continuing to make sure that we are remembering these very, very important parts in our continued history and our story. I think here in Oak Park, it's huge. It's something that people travel all over to see. Working at the Oak Park Public Library, I've had the opportunity to see it firsthand, and people say that they are coming from other communities just to see the work that we are doing here in Oak Park because they don't see it in their community. So I think that's a really honoring and humbling feeling to know that we're viewed in such a way and that we continue to do this despite what's happening outside. So I think that's a credit to you all and those people who, strap it up every day to continue to perpetuate this form of government. And it's, like I said, it's a credit to you all who administer it on a daily basis, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to the last 4 members of staff that stayed with us this evening. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. I can't thank you all enough for everything you do. So just wanted to, like I said, continue to remember, what's going on in our environment, but also remember what's going on with this Black History Month, what that means to people and individuals continuously, and the battles that have been fought throughout history, just to be able to talk about our history. And that alone is enough motivation for me to continue to know that we speak for people who can't always make it to our board meetings, who are sometimes working 2, 3, 4 jobs to continue to provide for their families. So we are the voice for some of these individuals who don't always have the opportunity to make it to the board table. And that was, one of the things that took really close to heart for people when they told us about, when they talked to us about being elected, is I'm never going to make it to a board meeting, but I expect you to be the voice for us when we're not there. So definitely appreciate and I'm honored that, we have that opportunity to speak for them and that we continue on a daily basis to fight for those things. We have members of this board table who fight so hard. It's very inspiring. So I thank each and every one of you. And with that, take it to a vote. Can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.